Chapter 851. The Misty Mansion's goal was to monopolize it, and they wanted to monopolize it silently. This Chao Guofeng actually wanted to turn an already exposed prodigy into an invisible person again, and use him as the Misty Mansion's secret weapon to secretly groom, and then suddenly become famous all over the world. How could there be such a cheap thing? But now that things had developed to this stage, no matter how Chao Guofeng tried to hide, he would still bring him back to the Misty Mansion eventually. As long as he kept following him, there would come a day where he would be exposed. And one more thing. You, Zhan Mubai, are heavily injured now, and are not his match. If you forcefully make a move, you will only be asking for humiliation. Bai Qifeng stood up. Ling said, Holy Emperor Zhan, it's our fault that we made a mistake, but don't accuse others recklessly just because you feel it's unfair. On the night of the incident, me, Boss Chow, and the rest of us were together the whole night. We can all testify for each other. Such a despicable thing. The people of the Misty Mansion really cannot do it. Testify? What's the use of you testifying? Zhan Mubai had completely gone mad. Aren't you all in the same boat? The 7 of you are that prodigy's master. Hee. The 7 of you came from the same place, colluding together and saying that you want to testify for each other. Don't forget, when you guys are discussing about accepting a disciple together, I was watching and listening at the side. Bai Qifeng, do you King think that we are all idiots? You said that even I don't believe what I said just now. Let me ask you in return, now that you're saying that this is evidence, do you believe it yourself? Truly shameless. Chao Guofeng and Bai Qifeng were instantly enraged. Chao Guofeng was still feeling remorseful for wrongly accusing his old friend, but now that remorseful feeling had completely disappeared, and the only thing left in his heart was endless anger. Ling said, whether you believe it or not is your own business. Anyway, this is the truth. We didn't do it. Zhan Mubai, Holy Emperor Zhan, I'm really sorry for what happened today. The mountain is high and the river is long. There will be a day when the truth will come to light. You can do whatever you want now. Us brothers will take our leave. Farewell. Chao Guofeng, you make it sound so easy. You've humiliated this old man so much, and now that your act has been seen through by us, you want to leave just like that? How can there be such a cheap thing in this world? Zhan Mubai said angrily, You can leave if you want, but leave your head here, or leave me my disciple. Chao Guofeng, do as you see fit. I'll leave your leg behind. Bai Qifeng spat disdainfully and said, Zhan Mubai, do you still know how high the sky is and how thick the earth is? A piece of trash like you actually want to keep our boss Chow's head? Dream on. Is it because those few blows just now didn't satisfy you? You still want to get beaten up? At this point, both sides had completely fallen out. So Zhan Mubai's tone was especially ruthless and did not leave any leeway. And Bai Qifeng's words were even sharper and unkind, poking at Zhan Mubai's scars with every word. Chao Guofeng let out a long sigh and turned around. Enough nonsense, let's go. He walked out first. Bai Qifeng laughed coldly and took a few steps back, facing the people from the 3 holy lands. Facing Zhan Mubai, he laughed mockingly and even stretched out his index finger, shaking it lightly. Zhan Mubai, you should know your limits in everything. Leave us behind? You're not worthy. Only then did he turn around and leave. The other 5 Saint Emperors also revealed looks of disdain. They looked coldly and cruelly at Zhan Mubai before leaving in a single file. Zhan Mubai was so angered by Bai Qifeng's words that his eyes turned black, and he almost couldn't breathe. After a long while, he finally managed to catch his breath. After a violent coughing fit, he started cursing crazily. The 7 generations of female relatives of the Holy Emperor in the Misty Mansion were instantly in big trouble. The surrounding people all had strange expressions on their faces. They all felt that their horizons and ears had been broadened. Cursing in the streets, everyone present had heard it before. No matter how ugly it was, they had all experienced it. But this Holy Emperor cursing in the streets, who had ever heard it before? This was the first time this had ever happened. Chun Qing Tian watched with hatred as the people from the Misty Mansion left, his eyes spitting fire. In his heart, he naturally believed Jean Mubai's judgment. These few holy emperors from the Misty Mansion had killed his own son to deceive the heavens. But just now, due to Chao Guofeng and the rest's unparalleled skills, he did not dare to say anything. Now that they had left, he walked forward angrily and knelt in front of Jean Mubai. Before he said anything, his tears were already falling like rain. Holy Emperor Jean, my own son died so innocently in the hands of the people from the Misty Mansion. You must uphold justice for me, ah. At this moment, Jean Mubai was extremely embarrassed and furious. He had lost half of his rationality. Hearing that, he sent Chun Qing Tian flying with a kick and scolded, F***CK off. Go F***CK off. This daddy will uphold justice for you. But who will uphold justice for this daddy? Scram! Don't bother me. If you dare to speak again and anger this daddy, today your entire Chun family will be annihilated. Chun Qing Tian's body flew up like a rubber ball. In midair, he was already feeling extremely frustrated, as though he was about to die. You guys came here, ate my food, stayed in my place, took my things, used my things, played with my things, and even ordered my entire family around like slaves. The slightest bit of disobedience, and you'll be scolded. Now that my son has been killed, I'm begging you to uphold justice. But you still want to treat me like this? Where is the justice? Where's the justice? His vision darkened, and, at the same time, the part of his chest that was kicked was unbearably painful. His internal organs felt like they were being torn apart. With a wah sound, he spat out a mouthful of blood, falling to the ground with a thud, rolling a few times before fainting. For such a minor character to faint, it was a trivial matter that couldn't be any more trivial. Even if he really died, so what? The people from the three holy lands saw that the farce had ended and quickly dispersed. Jean Mubai angrily returned to his room and sat down to recuperate. But the more he thought about it, the angrier he got. His head felt like it was about to explode, and he just couldn't calm himself down. All the way until noon, he still hadn't calmed down. Angrily, he drank 2 mouthfuls of water and smashed the water bottle away. The people from a Misty Mansion moved out of the Chun residence that morning and stayed in an inn in the city. Of course, Hai Wu Ye and He Ji Qiu from the three holy lands accompanied them the entire time. These two people had received benefits from Jean Mubai, so they naturally had to accompany and monitor them. Chao Guofeng and the rest were so depressed that they wanted to commit suicide. No matter what, they were in the wrong for today's matter, but they couldn't bear to offend these two people again. They could only turn a blind eye and pretend that they were two invisible people. Hai Wu Ye and He Ji Qiu, who had gained nothing, shamelessly stayed in the inn as well. Although the three holy lands seemed to be fighting each other openly and covertly on the surface, once one reached the level of the Holy Emperor, they would understand that the three holy lands were actually one big family. They were bound together for good or bad. Chao Guofeng and Bai Qifeng had insulted the Hermitage's Jean Mubai in front of them, which was equivalent to indirectly insulting the illusory Blood Sea and supreme Golden City. How could the two of them not be furious? The two of them had already decided that even if it wasn't for Jean Mubai, they would still find that free and natural physique prodigy. At that time, if Chao Guofeng and the rest still didn't admit to their wrongdoings, they would rather ask their old ancestors to come out and snatch this rare talent back. This was no longer just a matter of who the free and natural physique prodigy belonged to. This was a matter of the three holy lands' face. Your Misty and Misty Mansion's way of doing things was a little too arrogant, practically treating the Holy Emperor of the three holy lands like a fool. How could there be such a good thing? Now, in their hearts, they were certain that Chao Guofeng was trying to monopolize that young genius, and he was trying to hide the truth from them. At that time, as long as we find that person, let's see what you, Chao Guofeng, have to say. You can humiliate the three holy lands until they have no way to retaliate. We can similarly force you to commit suicide as long as the witnesses and evidence are present. Even if you, Chao Guofeng, are the Holy Emperor, you will still have to give us compensation and an explanation. At that time, this explanation would be Chao Guofeng's life. In the blink of an eye, it was nighttime. Jean Mubai finally calmed down and began to circulate his xian qi to treat his injuries. Speaking of which, although his external injuries looked rather pitiful, they were only superficial injuries. With the shocking recovery ability of a saint, a single cycle of rest would be enough to recover instantly. Instead, it was the internal injuries caused by Chao Guofeng's palms that were the real injuries, and he would need to recuperate for a few days. Today, the Chun family's attitude had obviously turned cold, but Jean Mubai did not take it to heart. In his eyes, this sort of small worldly family was not worth a mention. If he really felt unhappy one day, he could just wipe them out with a flip of his hand. Deep into the night, Jean Mubai finished his work. Feeling the internal injuries in his body once again, he sighed hatefully. This Chao Guofeng was really ruthless. Just at this time, the sound of the wind outside suddenly sounded out, but it turned into a sinister feeling. Jean Mubai's brows furrowed. Langling said, "Which expert has arrived? Please come in and have a chat." There was a low laugh, and a black figure entered the room with a swoosh. The doors and windows were all closed, but this person had inexplicably entered the room and leisurely paced 2 steps in front of Jean Mubai. This person was tall, dressed in black, and there was a sinister black aura rising from his body. It was so dark that his entire person seemed like an illusory shadow and did not feel real at all. Although this person was dressed in black, his face was not covered. However, Jean Mubai could feel that his face was hazy, and no matter how hard he tried, he could not see what this person looked like. This person's entire appearance was like that of an evil spirit that had suddenly appeared in the human world under the cover of the night. 9 serenities and 14 masters. It's you. It's actually you. Jean Mubai was shocked, and he could not help but feel a chill on his back. To be able to recognize me in an instant, you have good eyesight. This person's tone also carried an unusually cold and sinister tone. Although he spoke, his mouth did not seem to have moved at all. He looked at Jean Mubai, and in his eyes, his pupils strangely turned completely white, then completely black, and finally returned to the pupils of a normal person. Secretly, this 9 Nether 14th young master was laughing so hard that his intestines were about to break. How was this 9 serenities and 14 masters? It was clearly Jun Dashao who had come to play tricks again. And this time, it was the start of the biggest battle between him and the 3 Holy Lands. Among them, the most important character was this person that he was disguised as the 9 serenities and 14 masters. Jean Mubai's entire body was covered in cold sweat. Chapter 852. Although Jean Mubai knew that the 9 Nether 14th young master's injuries were extremely severe, and the 9 Nether 14th young master might not have the strength to kill him. But as the saying goes, a person's reputation is like a tree's shadow. How could he not be shocked? Holy Emperor Jean, right? 9 serenities and 14 masters' tone carried a hint of disdain and arrogance. It was as if he was giving Jean Mubai a lot of face by talking to Jean Mubai. Jean Mubai was originally 80% sure that this person was 9 serenities and 14 masters, but now that he spoke, this 80% certainty suddenly became 100%. Completely certain, other than that lunatic, no one else in the world would speak in such a tone. After all, he was facing the Holy Emperor. Jean Mubai's mood immediately stabilized. Knowing that the situation could not get any worse, Jean Mubai calmed down. He slowly stood up and smiled. "I didn't know that you were coming. Forgive me for not coming out to greet you. Mubai fought with someone today and was injured. It's a little indecent. I'll let you laugh at me." 9 serenities and 14 masters was far more famous than him, so it was natural for him to call him senior. Also, 9 serenities and 14 masters was known for their extraordinary strength. They were also known for their decisiveness and straightforwardness. If he was really here to kill him, he would have already killed him without saying a word. Since he had not made a move yet, his original intention was definitely not to kill him. As long as he did not take the initiative to provoke this peerless villain, he should be able to avoid a fight. Then there was no need to be overly nervous and ruin his identity for nothing. Besides, It had only been a month since this guy was seriously injured. He should not have recovered so quickly. Even if he was still not his opponent, it should not be a problem for him to resist for a while until reinforcements arrived. With this in mind, Jean Mubai felt reassured. As long as his safety was guaranteed, everything else was negotiable. Jean Mubai had already made up his mind. In an instant, he regained the graceful bearing of a strong, holy emperor. At least, he was no longer trembling with fear like before. However, anyone with a discerning eye would be able to see that Jean Mubai was putting on a strong front. In fact, there was nothing wrong with this. In this world, when faced with such a peerless villain alone, how many people would not be afraid? Even young Master Jun might not have been completely free of anxiety on that day. Yes, little Jean, if you weren't injured today, I wouldn't have come, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters said disdainfully. Huh, what does Senior mean by that? Jean Mubai felt a little strange when he heard this. This form of address from the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters made Jean Mubai not know whether to laugh or cry. Little Jean? Little Jean, seemed to be more than 700 years old. However, there were rumors in the 3 Holy Lands that calling himself this young master was the catchphrase of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. So, it was appropriate for this peerless villain who was at least 800 years old to call himself Little Jean. Kakik, Jean Mubai. That day in the Tian Fa forest, you attacked with your sword and injured my heart and lungs. I was almost doomed. You were really impressive. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters laughed strangely and said with a cold, murderous intent. This sentence was something that could not be said unless it was personally experienced. Jean Mubai smiled faintly and said, Senior, what are you saying? Not to mention that day, even now, you and I are still enemies. Naturally, we will do anything in a battle. Mubai only hates that my Xian cultivation is too shallow, and I can't kill you with one strike. I missed such a great opportunity. Every night, I dream of it, and I still regret it. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters snorted and said, You are very bold. Facing this young master, you actually dare to speak sarcastically? Are you really not afraid of death? Jean Mubai laughed and said, I believe that as long as one is human, they will be afraid of death. But if Senior really wants to kill me, regardless of whether I am sarcastic or afraid of death, do you think that will stop Senior from killing me? The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters was startled. Then he laughed strangely. The black mist surrounding him rose and surged. He shouted, Well said, Jean Mubai. With your state of mind and bearing, you are worthy of the title of the Holy Emperor. He paused and said, But how do you know that I am not here to kill you? Or do you really think that I can't kill you? When Jean Mubai heard this, he was startled. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters who were just in front of him suddenly disappeared. At the same time, there was a sharp sound of wind breaking behind him, as if a sharp blade was cutting through the air. Jean Mubai was shocked. His whole body rushed out, and at the same time his body suddenly became as thin as a piece of paper. He fell to the ground, but he still felt a stabbing pain in his back. It was obvious that he had been stabbed by some kind of weapon, but under his dodging and dealing with it with all his might, it was only a flesh wound. This was indeed the spiritual sense of an expert of the Holy Emperor. Although Jean Mubai thought that he was lucky, he did not dare to be careless. He suddenly turned around, and in the blink of an eye, he had used 7 or 8 superb techniques and even changed his body form more than 10 times. He was running for his life with all his might. However, after that sudden attack, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters obviously did not continue to attack. Jean Mubai calmed down a little, but he was also very puzzled. Since both sides had already started fighting, why did the murderer not continue to chase after him? Finally, he turned around and looked at the madman in front of him. He also suppressed the long cry for help that he had prepared. After all, if he cried for help, it would definitely anger the madman. He would decide what to do next after seeing what the madman was going to do. He saw that the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters was holding an abnormally narrow, strange blade in his hand. He was calmly scraping it on his left hand. He did not even look at Jean Mubai. 9 Serenities, Frostblade. Laughing loudly, the 9 Nether 14th young master lowered his head and said in a seemingly happy manner, "That day, you had a part in causing me to suffer heavy injuries that I have yet to recover from. Today, I've come to settle the score with you and settle the enmity. But seeing that you're still a straightforward and upright person, this young master's arrival today seems a little overbearing and unfair. Forget it. This young master has always fought against the many. If I kill you today, I'm sure you won't be satisfied in your heart, so I'll let you live for a few more days. Just now, I just wanted to tell you that if I really want to take your life, you do not have much time left." As soon as the laughter stopped, the rolling mist on the body of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters suddenly became thicker. It became thicker, and gradually, it became so thick that it became blurry. Then, with a whoosh, it disappeared completely. Even the body of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters disappeared without a trace. All the doors and windows were still closed. Only Jean Mubai was left in the room. Even the furnishings in the room were untouched. There was no trace of anyone coming in. From the beginning to the end, it was as if he had just had a dream. What a terrible nightmare. If Jean Mubai had died just now, this would be the standard murder in the secret chamber incident. Jean Mubai, who was still in a state of shock, stood there blankly for a while. Then, he slowly moved his almost stiff body to a chair and sat down. After staring blankly for a while, he suddenly started sweating profusely. That was close. Ever since the sudden appearance of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, Jean Mubai seemed to be calm. In fact, his heart was already in a mess. He could not even force himself to calm down. Back then, he and the other 20 Holy Emperor worked together to ambush the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, who had just broken through the seal and only retained 30% to 20% of his power at his peak. There were casualties and injuries now that the opponent had come to find him alone. How could he be any better? Facing such a peerless villain, Jean Mubai did not even dare to call for reinforcements loudly. He was afraid that he would provoke the opponent. With a fearless spirit, Jean Mubai forced himself to ignore life and death and spoke with assurance. Even so, the moment the opponent made his move, Jean Mubai was still scared out of his wits. His reaction at that moment was purely instinctive, a defensive instinct that stemmed from inertia. However, the reason he did not die just now was not because his reaction was amazing. It was just that the opponent did not want to kill him. However, the strangest thing was that the villain only said a few words, lightly stabbed him, and left. Why? Why did he not kill me? Since he did not want to kill me, why did he come? Could it be that what he had said was pure nonsense? What did he mean? It had been some time since the villain left. With the lunatic's lightness skill, he should have gone far by now. However, the lingering fear in Jean Mubai began to surge like the rising tide of the sea. It surged endlessly, wave after wave. His face turned pale in an instant. He sat on a chair in a daze, his body trembling slightly. There was only one thought left in his mind. Why? After a long time, the cold sweat on Jean Mubai's body finally stopped gushing out. He calmed himself down and shouted, "Someone come! Someone come!" He didn't notice that his voice was extremely hoarse. The fake 9 Serenities and 14 Masters used the yin-yang escape to burrow into the ground and out of Jean Mubai's room. He quickly disappeared into thin air and left the Chun family's mansion in the blink of an eye. Jun Dashao stopped at a quiet corner and appeared. He could not help but wipe the cold sweat off his body. He screamed at his heart. Why? How could Jun Moxie not want to kill Jean Mubai? With such a deep hatred, as long as it was possible, he was not willing to let Jean Mubai live for another second. However, the problem was that he was, after all, a fake 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. He was not the real 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. It was not that he did not want to kill him, but he could not. He could not kill him. With his current strength, he still could not kill Jean Mubai. Even if Jean Mubai had internal injuries and was not at his full strength, Although Zhang Mubai was scared out of his wits by the sudden arrival of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, he was still the Holy Emperor. He still had the instincts of a Holy Emperor. And because of this, when faced with the sudden attack of Zhang Mubai, he immediately gathered all the Xian energy in his body to form a defense. Jun Moxie wielded the 9 Serenities' frost blade and slashed with 70% of his strength, but he could not break through his Xian energy defense. However, it only managed to leave a small wound on his body that was 1 centimeter deep. This kind of small wound, to the Holy Emperor, would not affect him much even if he stabbed him 1,000 times. Therefore, Jun Moxie made a prompt decision and immediately retreated. Chapter 853. The second update. Only these 2 updates today. Something delayed me for the entire afternoon. Tomorrow is the Lantern Festival. The update may be late. If you were to forcefully kill him and his identity was exposed by the other party, then it would be really bad, and the matter would be over. Jun Moxie only had one real purpose for this trip, and that was to release a piece of news. The 9 Serenities and 14 Masters was in Chrysanthemum City. If he could successfully kill Zhang Mubai, that would naturally be the best. The unique scars on the corpse were caused by the 9 Serenities' frostblade, which was equivalent to proving this point. Although the plan was not completed, the effect would be the same if Zhang Mubai personally announced this matter, or even better. However, the defense of the Holy Emperor really opened Jun Moxie's eyes. It was really too valiant. He had concentrated 70% of his strength to launch a sneak attack, not to mention others. He believed that even an ordinary saint would most likely die from a sword. But against the Holy Emperor, it was almost completely ineffective, especially when the Holy Emperor himself had internal injuries and was not at full strength. The astonishing gap between a saint and a Holy Emperor could be seen clearly. Recalling the astonishing strength of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters that day when they killed the Holy Emperor, Jun Dashao somewhat dejectedly sighed. Compared to the top experts of this world, the gap is still too big. Last time in the Snowy Mountains, I had successfully broken through to the 2nd level of the Venerable Realm. After this period of accumulation, although I had broken through to the 5th level of the Hongjun Pagoda, my own strength did not seem to have made much progress and only changed to a completely new form. Up until now, I was only at the 3rd level of the Venerable Realm, and that Zhang Mubai was a genuine 2nd level Holy Emperor, and I was more than 10 levels below him. If I could kill him, that would be really strange. Jun Moxie stood up and lightly exhaled. Since Zhang Mubai had already received the news, the next step would be for Chao Guofeng and Hai Wuya. However, they had moved out of the Chun family and stayed in the same inn, which gave him less space to move around. Jun Moxie's figure flashed in the night. No matter what, since the plan had been officially launched, he had to carry it out to the end. Taking advantage of the fact that everyone was very excited tonight, how could he not add fuel to the fire? Since the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters had come to Chrysanthemum City, how could he face himself if he didn't find something for him to do? In the midst of flying, Jun Moxie suddenly thought of something. The Qin clan had recognized the corpse. Didn't that mean that there was a possibility that he, the prodigy with the free and natural physique, could be used in the future? Gagaga, this young master is still thinking of ways to make up for this gap. Heaven is really following my wishes as he thought about it. Jun Moxie smiled lecherously. It was as if he could see the rainbow god tree in the misty mansion waving at him, and that heavenly Saint Lotus Pond, 9-segment exquisite lotus. If any woman happened to see that smile on young Master Jun's face, not to mention a beautiful woman, even a 70 or 80-year-old lady would immediately hide as far away as possible. They had never seen such a coquettish person. What a slut. In the inn, Chao Guofeng, by Chi Feng, and the rest were gathered in a room, their brows furrowed and their hearts filled with doubt. If that person is not Zhang Mubai, who could it be? Although Zhang Mubai's words are detestable, they are not without reason. In this world, there are indeed not many people who can kidnap someone under our watch. Chao Guofeng furrowed his brows. unable to understand. Hai Wuya is not that tall. He Qiu is a little fat, and the other holy emperors of the three holy lands have only just advanced to the holy emperor realm. There's no way they could hide from our divine sense and sneak into the small courtyard. Who could it be? Boss Chow, don't judge Zhang Mubai just by looking at his aggrieved face. I still firmly believe that this matter has something to do with Zhang Mubai or the three holy lands. Bai Qifeng stood and said coldly, no matter where this person was, he would never sit down. And his temper was terrible to the extreme. The moment he spoke, it was like a firecracker. That day in the Tian Fa forest, it was precisely a single sentence from him that caused the five factions to completely collapse. But those who knew him well knew that this was how this fellow spoke. He was born with a face that deserved a beating and a temper that deserved a beating. If there came a day when he spoke and no one got angry, that would be strange. What do you mean by that? Chao Guofeng raised his brows. The reason is very simple. The potential of the free and natural physique, you and I know it, and Zhang Mubai also knows it. No matter what, he will not give up. Bai Qifeng laughed coldly. A free and natural physique without any foundation. This is equivalent to the greatest treasure. Zhang Mubai is not stupid, and I believe that the others are not fools either. No matter which faction of the three holy lands obtains this person, it can be predicted that in the next 200 to 300 years, the faction that obtains this person will be able to completely suppress the other two factions, and can even use this chance to merge the three holy lands into one. As Bai Qifeng spoke till here, the other 6 holy emperors all nodded in agreement. Since that's the case, after Hai Wuya and He Zhiqiu find out about this matter, will they really keep their promise? Snatch this person over and give him to Zhang Mubai, just for a few pieces of trash. If it were you guys, would you be willing? Bai Qifeng Lengling smiled. Of course not. Other than Chao Guofeng, who was still considering, the other 5 shook their heads in unison. Since you guys are also not willing, what makes you think that Hai Wuya and He Zhiqiu are willing to do that? Could it be that Zhang Mubai is their biological father? So what if their physiques don't match? Is it more difficult for us to temporarily change our physiques than eating and drinking? It's just that we respect our identities and are not willing to do it, and even more so feel disdain to do it. Bai Qifeng chuckled coldly, his voice slightly louder. Softer. Chao Guofeng hurriedly shouted. He could tell that this sworn brother of his was already extremely angry at Hai Wuya and He Zhiqiu for following and supervising them all the way. Right now, he was looking for trouble, wanted to teach those two a lesson as well. Chao Guofeng had already set up his qi field. As long as he didn't use too much force, no one outside would be able to hear him. Even if the people outside were experts of the Holy Emperor, it was no exception. But Bai Qifeng's last sentence was purposely raised his voice, and he even used Xianqi. If those two people were paying attention to the commotion here, they would definitely be able to hear this sentence. With regards to the dignity of the 2 saint emperors, who were so high up that they could not be blasphemed, this sentence was enough to start a war, a battle to the death that would not end until one side was dead. In the room next door, following Bai Qifeng's words, He Zhiqiu snorted angrily and was about to explode. Although Hai Wuya's face was also filled with anger, he still pulled He Zhiqiu back. On what basis? These people from the Misty Mansion are really too much. They know that we are here, but they still slander us like this. This sentence is clearly a provocation. It's fine if you don't want to do anything, but are you going to pull me in as a coward as well? He Zhiqiu roared angrily. Old He, put the big picture first. The Misty Mansion can ignore the big picture because they have a lot of escape routes. They just need to hide in the Misty Mansion, and even the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters won't be able to get in. But can we do it? The situation is stronger than us, so we have to endure it no matter what. Hai Wuya's eyes were deep, and his words were filled with righteousness, but there was a cold sneer on his lips. Oof. One day, I will make these old fools pay the price. He Zhiqiu spat out hatefully and sat down again. Brother Bai, since they are not willing to let go, why did they agree to help? One of the short holy emperor asked in confusion. They are probably just trying to reap the benefits. If they directly reject that old man Jean's request and even propose to compete for the ownership of that child, wouldn't their previous positions be on opposing sides, and it would be even harder for them to fight against us? Instead, they would pretend to agree, and that would make things easier for them. Bai Qifeng's voice was still very loud. Who can't see through this little bit of scheming? Even a 5 to 6-year-old kid can see with his, but that it's just that old man Jean is blinded by greed. To think that those two bastards actually thought that their plan was some peerless plan, what a joke. This Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu have really shown this old man what a real fool is. The breathing of the two people next door became more and more rapid, and their breathing became heavier and heavier. Their bodies were trembling uncontrollably. Their teeth were clenched so tightly that they almost shattered. There is no point in continuing to make wild guesses now. What we are discussing now is who was the one who kidnapped the child, and not Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu's positions. Bai Qifeng, you are putting the cart before the horse. You must know that now is not the time for you to be willful. Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu's positions may be questionable, but with their strength, it is still difficult for them to come and go as they please in front of us. I believe that the person that night was not either of them. Chao Guofeng snorted and quickly interrupted. If he allowed Bai Qifeng to continue speaking without restraint, the entire Chrysanthemum City would probably fly into the sky tonight. Those two fellows indeed do not have such methods, but that does not mean that they can completely escape responsibility. Although we only have a few people here, the three Holy Lands might not have the same. Bai Qifeng said, you must know that up until now, even when dealing with the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters in the Tianfa Forest, the three Holy Lands only sent out 3 second-level Holy Emperors each. As for the 3rd and 4th level Holy Emperor, not a single one of them was sent out. The strength that they have gathered is not small, but it may not be that they do not have the intention of borrowing our Misty Mansion strength. The biggest possibility is that they hope that the experts of our Misty Mansion will perish together with the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, so that they can reap the benefits. On this point, it was all thanks to Boss Chao's far-sighted planning that he came up with a unified arrangement. Only then did they avoid the awkward situation of fighting on their own. Otherwise, the three Holy Lands would definitely be watching from the side and reaping the benefits. Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu looked at each other. This egomaniac was right on this point. Chapter 854. Mockery flashed in Bai Qifeng's eyes. Although allowing a young man to enter the Heaven Saint Palace as a guardian is an unprecedented matter, this young man has the free and natural physique that has never been seen before. If we can obtain this person, the Heaven Saint Palace will definitely be willing to open at once. I believe there is no doubt about this. Next door, Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu looked at each other in shock. Although this Bai Qifeng was arrogant, but his analysis was not wrong at all. The two of them really did have this idea. Following that, they could no longer hear the conversation from the other side. Obviously, Bai Qifeng saw that his provocation was futile and obediently lowered his voice. After all, many of the contents of the conversation were secrets of the Misty Mansion and could not be known by the people of the three Holy Lands. Under the cover of Chao Guofeng's powerful aura, Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu's cultivation were far inferior to this 3rd-level Holy Emperor, so they could no longer hear the conversation. What happened next is even easier to deduce. Although Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu agreed to Zhan Mubai on the surface, they must have also reported it to Heaven Saint Palace. Bai Qifeng chuckled. Boss Chao, as long as the people from the three Holy Lands are not limited to these people, or the people from the Heaven Saint Palace, then this deduction is completely valid. Even if it's not 100%, there's still a 70 to 80% chance. In the end, the experts from Heaven Saint Palace made their move and kidnapped that kid. And it is very likely that they sent 2 experts at once. One of them left in another direction, and the other brought the 2nd son of the Chun family to lure us away. At the most crucial moment, he killed us with a single palm strike, causing our misty, illusory manor to lose all hope. Even if the seniors of the misty, illusory manor came later, They could just say that the person was already dead and push the blame away. Makes sense, Chao Guofeng said. At first, he thought that the person's head had been smashed to pieces, and he wouldn't be able to recognize it anymore. Even if Zhang Mubai had to take the blame, or even sacrifice Zhang Mubai to settle this matter, it would be worth it as long as he could save the child. However, the head of the Chun family accidentally recognized the real identity of the corpse with a birthmark. This matter must have disrupted their plan and exposed a loophole, allowing us to deduce the truth. Although he said that he had deduced the truth, his brows furrowed even tighter. If that's the case, then I'm afraid I really won't be able to obtain this disciple of mine. It's not impossible to snatch it back. Bai Qifeng saw through Chao Guofeng's concerns and chuckled. How can our disciple be so easily snatched away by them? There might be a way to solve this problem. What's the plan? Everyone asked. Our Misty Mansion has always been an independent entity, unlike the three Great Holy Lands, where there are potential conflicts of interest between us. As long as we report the situation and ask the manor head to come out and mediate, we can get this disciple back. At that time, we can ask the manor head to take this disciple under his wing. You guys also know that the manor head won't care about this. As long as this person is in the Misty Mansion, he doesn't care who he is under. As long as he belongs to the Misty Mansion, there's no problem. Even if the manor head also takes a liking to this child, it's fine to let the child have another master. It's better than letting the child be covered in dust or become an enemy. That's a good idea. Chao Guofeng furrowed his brows and carefully considered the feasibility of this matter. But this way, the Misty Mansion and the three Great Holy Lands will definitely have conflicts. But from today onwards, the conflict between the two can no longer be resolved. Even if we offend them again, it's not a big deal. Besides, it's easy to talk things through between the seniors. Furthermore, Boss Chow had been shouldering all the responsibilities of the misty, illusory manor all these years. He had put in a lot of hard work, and the manor lord had to give him some face. Otherwise, wouldn't everyone's hearts turn cold? Not to mention, if that child really falls into the hands of the three Great Holy Lands, when he grows up in the future, there's a high possibility that he'll become a huge enemy of our Misty Mansion. Chao Guofeng's eyes lit up as he listened. Finally, he clapped his hands and said, "That's right, it's indeed so. Qifeng, your brain is still the quickest. Just now, this old man was so worried that I couldn't eat." Bai Qifeng laughed and said, "Boss, you're also like old John, confused by the situation. It's because you care too much that you can't see through the complicated situation. But I'm different. You guys also know that I've always been a simple-minded person." Everyone laughed together. Everyone felt much more relaxed, and hope was reignited in their hearts towards taking back this free and natural physique disciple. Everyone started to discuss the direction of the plan, how to avoid the three Great Holy Lands, and how to report the situation to the manor head as soon as possible. The volume of their conversation naturally became softer and softer. These could all be considered true secrets. If outsiders heard it, it would spoil the entire plan. Although the two holy emperors next door had gathered all their strength and used their five senses to the maximum, they still couldn't hear anything. They could only sigh helplessly. Although the seven holy emperors were discussing together, Bai Qifeng had something else on his mind. Although he didn't say it out loud, he was feeling very aggrieved in his heart. Such a rare and good disciple was lost just like that. Although I gave that Zhang Mubai a good beating after the matter and vented a lot of my frustrations, judging from the current situation, that Zhang Mubai is actually also a victim. Those two main culprits, Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu, are actually following us here to spy on us, and we can't do anything about it. What is going on? But it's too aggrieving. If we can't retaliate, how are we going to vent this anger? If we really swallow this anger, wouldn't it make them think that the people of the Misty Mansion are too easy to bully? Although Boss Chow's heart was filled with anger, he was an experienced and prudent person. He wasn't willing to really shed all pretense of cordiality and cause a huge ruckus. If this continued, how was he going to vent this anger? Bai Qifeng's eyes flickered as he lowered his head. He secretly made up his mind. Didn't they admit that they had received benefits from Zhanmu Bai? In a while, this holy emperor will make sure that all their efforts are in vain. Just at this moment, Jun Dashao slowly appeared in the air, quietly like a flying cotton as he landed in the inn. He did not land directly on the roof, but stopped in midair when there was still some distance between him and the roof. These were all holy emperor experts. Although he was currently in the state of yin-yang escape, if he landed directly on the roof, as long as he caused the slightest abnormality in the airflow, he might be discovered. He believed that the few holy emperors in the Misty Mansion would definitely be on high alert, paying attention to any traces. If he was really accidentally discovered by them, that would be terrible, going for wool and coming home shorn. It was better to avoid any possibility of accidents. It was better to be safe than sorry. With all the precautions prepared, Jun Moxie no longer hesitated and threw out his divine sense. Yes, he threw it out. According to the trajectory of the divine sense, wasn't it just throwing it out? Young Master Jun first commanded his spirit sense to soar into the sky. Then he scattered his spirit sense in midair and silently covered the entire inn. By the time it was about to land on the inn, the countless spirit senses had already formed a gigantic net, enveloping the entire inn. There was absolutely no omission. This was Jun Moxie's unique technique. In fact, it seemed that only the art of unlocking heaven's fortune could create such a powerful divine sense function that could not be detected by others. Even the experts of the Holy Emperor were no exception. Jun Moxie's divine sense had silently covered the entire area and had locked onto the two rooms in an instant. He could not help but be a little surprised. Could it be that so many experts of the Holy Emperor were actually sleeping in the same bunk? After quietly checking, he found out that the people in the Misty Mansion were having a meeting, and the people from the Holy Land were waiting for an opportunity to eavesdrop next door. Seeing that both sides were the world's top experts, but were acting so sneakily, Jun Dashao almost fainted for a moment. These few families seemed to have cooperated sincerely for hundreds of years, and finally, with just a few moves, they had finally reached the point where they did not trust each other at all. This made Jun Moxie think of a famous saying, "There is no such thing as loyalty." The reason for loyalty is because the bargaining chips for betrayal are not enough. In the face of an absolute divergence of interests, even a deep friendship that had lasted for hundreds of years would still crumble in the face of such a divergence of interests. Of course, the long-term discord between their hearts was also a considerable part of the reason. Although today's incident also played a big part in the final analysis, the Holy Land and the Misty Mansion were afraid of each other, and that was the real deep reason for the rupture. Jun Moxie's eyes turned and silently floated into one of the empty rooms. As long as he was in the magical state of the yin-yang escape, as long as he did not do anything too extreme, no one would be able to detect him. Even the experts of the Holy Emperor were no exception. The 7 holy emperors of the Misty Mansion gathered in the middle room for a meeting, while Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu from the Holy Land were eavesdropping in the room on the right. This meant that the rooms on the left were the rooms where the rest of the people of the Misty Mansion lived. Jun Moxie counted and found that there were exactly 6 empty rooms, while on the right there was only 1 empty room. Apart from these 9 rooms, the other rooms were occupied by people who had nothing to do with them. With a slight sweep of his divine sense, he could already distinguish it. The room that Jun Moxie entered was the room of He Jiqiu from the 3 Great Supreme Golden City. He Jiqiu's personality was quite scholarly, and he often sighed, "Life is a big dream, and the affairs of the world are always cold in autumn." It was full of melancholy and melancholy, like a sentimental poet. Before he became the Holy Emperor, he was called Autumn Supreme, then Autumn Supreme, but when he reached the level of the Holy Emperor, he was called Holy Emperor Jiqiu. He Dang's golden wind drifted leaves, and the world was full of autumn. Autumn wind sword, autumn wind palm, autumn wind leg, and autumn divine art. Autumn wind leg moves the universe. Autumn wind palm strikes out the worries of ghosts and gods. Autumn divine art soars the universe. Autumn wind sword howls the world. Once it moves, the world will be filled with the sorrow of autumn. This was Ijichio's signature skill. The unique skill of the power of heaven and earth that he comprehended was 10,000 miles of sorrow of autumn. The moment Jun Moxie entered the room, he already knew whose room it was, because as long as it was a room that Ijichio had stayed in, there would naturally be a sense of desolation and sorrow. As long as someone entered this room, they would feel that the world was lost and life was boring, like water flowing east, unable to return. Jun Moxie thought, if this guy changed his room every day, I reckon that all the inns in the world would have to close down. Who in the world would be willing to stay in such a room that one could not help but feel sad and full of sorrow the moment they entered? What kind of person was this? He was a real weirdo. In for a penny, in for a pound. Jun Moxie casually swept the long and narrow luggage that Ijichio had placed at the head of the bed into the Hongjun Pagoda. No matter what, the Holy Emperor's luggage must have some value. Jun Dashao felt that he would definitely make a profit, even though he did not care about these small things. But no matter what, he had to take advantage first. Wouldn't he be an idiot if he didn't take advantage of a ready-made advantage? It was really too coincidental. Just as Jun Dashao succeeded, a small sound suddenly rang out. Jun Moxie couldn't help but be shocked. Weren't these two discussing in the room next door? Could it be that they didn't need to discuss after eavesdropping? I've already been careful enough. Could it be that I've still been discovered? He could only hold his breath and hide himself in the corner of the room. The window opened silently. Jun Moxie was secretly surprised. This Holy Emperor Jichio actually doesn't like to take the normal route, and even wants to enter my room through the window. He is indeed a weirdo. Just as he was thinking, a figure flashed, and another person appeared silently in the room. When Jun Moxie saw this, he almost cried out in shock. This person was silent and sneaky, like a thief. His figure was tall, and his face was thin. It was the Misty Mansion's Holy Emperor, Bai Qifeng. Bai Qifeng's personality was one of seeking revenge for the smallest grievance. Although he managed to beat up Zhang Mubai by chance today, his anger was far from over. Then, he was monitored by two holy emperors, although they might not be monitoring him, since they didn't say it explicitly. But this was how Bai Qifeng understood it, especially when Holy Emperor Bai was certain that today's awkward situation was caused by these two fellows. So, this Holy Emperor Bai wanted to teach them a lesson. Before the meeting ended, Bai Qifeng found an excuse to slip out. Knowing that Hai Wuya and He Jichio were eavesdropping next door, Bai Qifeng naturally wanted to go to a place with no one around. His target was the thing that Jun Dashao had already kept in the Hongjun Pagoda, He Jichio's luggage. The room was not very big, and with a sweep of his eyes, he had already looked around. But he didn't find what he was looking for. Holy Emperor Bai was a little angry, muttering to himself, F***CK. Don't tell me I have to bring my luggage to eavesdrop next door? Isn't this He Jichio a little too careful? Or maybe he didn't even bring his luggage over and left it at the Chun family? Muttering a few words, Holy Emperor Bai snorted and floated out silently. Chapter 855. Jun Moxie was dumbfounded. Is this still the behavior of the Holy Emperor? This is practically the behavior of a hoodlum, right? Bai Qifeng was still unwilling to give up, looking around. Jun Moxie's heart skipped a beat, and he snickered evilly. I was just fretting about how to start a fight with inanimate objects. You've really come at the right time. Thinking about it, he used his right hand and silently flicked out a gust of wind. With a loud bang, it hit the bronze mirror in the room. Although the force behind it was not very strong, the sound it made was extremely loud and clear. Bai Qifeng was just bending down to look under the bed when he heard the strange sound. He quickly retreated, and without even looking, he turned around and tried to escape from the window. Just at this time, an eerie voice came from behind him. You want to leave after pouring out a plate of trash? Bai Qifeng, is this all you've got? Could it be that the people in the Misty Mansion only have this many tricks up their sleeves? Bai Qifeng was enraged. He turned around abruptly and hollered, If I've poured it, then so be it. Only when he turned around did he realize that there was no one behind him. His back instantly broke out in cold sweat, drenching his clothes. He quickly turned around, wanting to escape, but it was already too late. With a loud bang, Hai Wuya and He Ji came in at the same time, one from the door and the other from the window. The two of them were just next door, focusing all their attention on the movements next door. Unexpectedly, they heard the commotion from the other side and immediately rushed back in shock, blocking by Chi Feng, who had already jumped to the window. In that instant, the three of them looked at each other, not knowing what to do. All of them were stunned. Bai Chi Feng was shocked and embarrassed, while Hai Wuya and He Ji were in complete disbelief. The Holy Emperor was a thief? An indescribably strange smell instantly filled the room. It seemed like the sour stench beside the vat wasn't any better. He Ji's face was as dark as water, completely expressionless. But he was the first to move. He walked over step by step and abruptly tore open the blanket. Instantly, the soup and leftovers were all revealed. A complete chicken head rolled down with its eyes wide open, circling around by Chi Feng's feet and looking up at the sky. Then, Yi Chio's gaze shifted and his expression changed again. The luggage he had placed at the head of the bed had disappeared without a trace. Turning around, he looked at Bai Chi Feng and chuckled coldly. Good. What a good holy emperor of the White Emperor. He was indeed open and candid. The people of the Misty Illusory Manor were all top-notch talents. Not only did they bring leftovers to entertain guests in the middle of the night, they were even very interested in Nissy's luggage and kept it for this old man. Bai Chi Feng, nice to meet you. This old man thanks you so much. Bai Chi Feng's face was completely red, his mouth agape and tongue-tied. His right hand was still holding onto the plate of food, and he actually forgot to put it down. Up until now, he still did not know why the bronze mirror on the wall would suddenly make a crisp sound when there was clearly no one in the room. And who was the person who spoke just now? He was feeling gloomy in his heart, so he wanted to play a prank to vent his anger. He might not have any evil intentions, but from the looks of the current situation, it was extremely terrible. The commotion here was not small, and Chao Guofeng and the rest had also ended their meeting. The 6 holy emperors all rushed over in an instant, and when they saw this scene, they were all dumbfounded. With Bai Chi Feng's unparalleled skills, he was actually caught red-handed doing such a small trick. What was going on? And in this instant, the invisible Jun Moxie silently escaped. Of course, he did not have the intention to leave immediately. He only went to Hai Wuya's room, and with a whoosh, Hai Wuya's luggage also entered the Hongjun Pagoda. Then, he silently returned, watching the show with great interest. With such a ready-made advantage, it would not be too much even if he did 10 or 8 secs every day. And there was also such a big show, the more the better. The performers were all experts of the Holy Emperor. It would be a pity if he did not watch it carefully. This instigator, the real thief, was actually the one who did it without anyone noticing. And all the blame was placed on the White Holy Emperor of the Misty Mansion. Jun Dashao's methods of making others a scapegoat had obviously increased greatly. Just like what he said, the White Holy Emperor next door was really in a terrible predicament. Holy Emperor Chao, shouldn't the Misty Mansion give me an explanation for tonight's matter? Ijichio's face was as dark as still water as he said slowly. Cough. Chi Feng, what exactly is going on? What are you doing? Chao Guofeng said sanctimoniously. What else can it be? It's just like this. Everything is in front of us. Is there still a need to say more? These 2 experts from the Holy Lands don't like us. Don't tell me this Bai is going to be bullied by them. At this point, Bai Chi Feng was instead very stubborn. Anyway, it's just like this. You all saw it too. I did it. What can you do about it? Hai Wuya and He Chi Feng's faces darkened at the same time. Bai Chi Feng, everyone here is already so old. No one here is a young lad. You have to be responsible for what you did. As the Holy Emperor, one of the strongest experts in the world, you actually did such a senseless thing, and you actually don't feel ashamed? To be so rude and unreasonable? Hiji said solemnly. Ashamed? Unreasonable? Haha, Hiji, let me ask you. The 2 of you colluded with each other to spy on us, and even try to eavesdrop on our conversation. Are you not ashamed? Bai Chi Feng snorted and said, to deal with gentlemen, I will naturally use open and above-board methods. But to deal with the two of you, there's no need to say anything, right? Hai Wuya snorted coldly and said, Bai Chi Feng, you better make things clear. Bai Chi Feng shrugged and said, so what if I make things clear? So what if I don't make things clear? Do I have to make things clear just because you want me to? Who do you think you are? He Ji Chio clasped his hands behind his back and said in a lang manner, we don't think that we are anyone, and we don't think that we're some big shots. But we ask ourselves, we still can't do such a despicable thing, much less throw a plate of leftovers into someone's bed. Bai Chi Feng, Holy Emperor Bai, what do you think? Bai Chi Feng's face turned purple as he shouted, He Ji Chio, cut the crap. I've long since found you an eyesore, come. He Ji Chio laughed disdainfully and said lightly, Holy Emperor Bai, if you want to fight, sure. But shouldn't you return my weapon first? Don't tell me that this is how people in your Misty Mansion fight, hiding other people's weapons first? Weapon? What weapon? Who took your weapon? Bai Chi Feng was stunned, a bad feeling rising in his heart. You're really very shameless. He Ji Chio laughed disdainfully. Is this how people in the Misty Mansion do things? Forget it, Bai Chi Feng. This old man will take on your strange peaks, rise 10,000 crags with my bare hands. As he spoke, he stretched out his hand, and with a whoosh, the hem of his robe fluttered without any wind, curling up in the air and tucking into his belt. Wait, Bai Chi Feng roared. This old man dares to take responsibility for what I've done. It's true that I've dumped the leftovers from your bed, but this old man did not take any *T weapon of yours. We have to figure this out. He Ji Chio was so angry that he laughed instead, a cold glint flashing in his eyes. Very good, you didn't take it. Do you think you didn't take it just because you said you didn't take it? There was no one in the room, my luggage was just placed at the head of the bed, and there was only Holy Emperor by here. Then my luggage and the weapon in it grew legs and ran away. This is what you mean, right? Holy Emperor Bai, this is what I think. Are you satisfied? How can I, Bai Chi Feng, be the kind of person who dares to take responsibility for what I've done? He Ji Chio, don't slander me here. You placed the things in Hai Wuya's room, and then came back to frame me. You're so shameless. Bai Chi Feng's beard trembled, and he was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Oh, since that's the case, come with me. He Ji Chio's body floated over, and the group arrived at Hai Wuya's room. He Ji Chio still had his hands behind his back, and he said calmly, Did you see it clearly? Holy Emperor Bai, in this room, there's only Brother Hai's luggage, and not mine. What else do you have to say? He had just spoken up to here when Hai Wuya suddenly exclaimed, Where's my luggage? Why did my luggage also disappear? Hai Wuya turned around abruptly, looking at Chao Guofeng and the few people from the Misty Mansion. He suddenly laughed coldly in extreme anger. Holy Emperor Chao, it's really good to have more people sending 1 or 2 people to do things, and it's actually so convenient. But doesn't Holy Emperor Chao feel that doing this is really shameless? Misty Mansion, as expected of the 2 words Misty, Hai Wuya and the other person's faces were ashen. In the luggage, there were not only their personal weapons, but also the gift they had just received from Zhan Mu Bai. Now that the matter was not settled, the gift was gone. Wasn't this too despicable? Both of them were extremely furious. Chao Guofeng said angrily, Hai Wuya, are you guys done yet? Bai Chi Feng only wanted to play a prank just now. We've all been friends for hundreds of years. What's the big deal? But you guys are actually so unforgiving and actually drag the whole Misty Mansion into this. He glared angrily. Today, Hermitage Zhan Mu Bai framed us first, and Illusory Blood Sea and Supreme Golden City are unreasonable. Do you guys think that the people from the Misty Mansion are so easy to bully? There must be a limit to everything. Once you do too much, you'll only tire others and yourself out, and it'll be too late for regrets. Hai Wuya chuckled coldly and said, I'm not clear about other things, but I know that Bai Chi Feng came in, and our things just happened to be missing. But the people from the Misty Mansion didn't lose anything, and you only know this? Isn't that enough? As he said this, Chao Guofeng's heart suddenly skipped a beat. He turned his head and shouted, "Go check our luggage." The Holy Emperor expert at the back responded and left. Haiwuya threw his head back and laughed loudly, looking very happy. "Chao Guofeng, you're really a good actor. Even at this time, you still haven't forgotten to act. Could it be that your luggage is also missing? A thief broke into the place where the 9 holy emperors live and stole all the luggage of the 9 holy emperors. This is really shocking news." Chao Guofeng pursed his lips, not saying a word. Not long later, that expert returned and shook his head lightly at Chao Guofeng. His meaning was clear. The things from the Misty Mansion were not lost. Chao Guofeng's face darkened in an instant. In Chao Guofeng's heart, these 2 luggage should really have been taken by Bai Qifeng. But Bai Qifeng was his brother, and his relationship with the 3 Holy Lands was so tense now. How could he punish his own brother in front of the enemy? Not only did Chao Guofeng understand, even Haiwuya and He Zhiqiu understood. The 2 holy emperors were so angry that their hair stood on end. It was obviously you who took it, and now you're still pretending to check, and after checking, you still dare to say that it wasn't lost? Isn't this clearly toying with us? Brother Hai, Brother He, I'm afraid there's a misunderstanding here. No matter how willful Bai Qifeng is, he definitely wouldn't have stolen your weapons. Perhaps the 2 of you should think again. Could it be that the 2 of you were afraid of being unsafe and left your luggage in the Qin residence? The more Chao Guofeng thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. Ever since they came here, there seemed to be too many things happening, almost one after another, all of them so unimaginable and out of their expectations. All in all, even though the holy emperors were gathered here, they were still extremely passive. It was as if there was an invisible hand fiddling with all of this. Haiwuya and He Zhiqiu looked at each other and laughed coldly at the same time. The 2 of them completely ignored Chao Guofeng's words. Their eyes were filled with rage and the desire to fight. Safe? Where in the world is there a safer place than beside the 2 of us? Do we have to leave our weapons far away as well? Your misty mansion has already done things to such an extent, and you still want to talk to us about some misunderstanding? Chao Guofeng, I used to think that you're a righteous and wise person, but from the looks of it now, your words are really not even worth a fart. At least a fart has a sound. Haiwuya shook his head. There's no point in talking more. We can only fight. In the middle of a busy city, fighting will harm the innocent. Holy Emperor Chao, please. A lonely expression like autumn's cold appeared on He Zhiqiu's face. In an instant, the sky was high and the clouds were clear, and he flew out first. Let's fight then. Could it be that this old man is afraid of you? Bai Qifeng hollered and followed behind, his speed as fast as lightning. This night, this Bai Holy Emperor was filled with injustice, grievance, and a thick sense of shame. He felt like he was about to explode. If he didn't vent it out a little, he might really suffer internal injuries from holding it in. Too shameful. The Holy Emperor of a generation had lowered his status and actually got caught in the act of stealing. Thinking of this, Bai Qifeng's anger burned to the max. This was clearly a trap, and it was a trap that targeted my temper. Everything was linked to each other, forcefully pushing the sh*t onto this old man's head, forcing this old man to the precipice of being wrongly accused. Do they really think this old man is so easy to bully? Seeing the 2 of them storming out angrily, Haiwuya snorted coldly and flicked his sleeves, following closely behind. Chao Guofeng let out a long sigh, and with a wave of his hand, the 6 of them turned into a streak of light and flew out. Chapter 856. The most satisfying thing was that these people were all Holy Emperor experts. At their level, they could only rely on their own strength to speak. Furthermore, everyone had a strong sense of subjectivity. As long as they had decided on something, then no matter how you explained it, it would be meaningless. From the Chun family to here, all the misunderstandings had not been cleared up. Thus, the higher the level, the harder it was to clear up a misunderstanding. This was the logic, because everyone's status was extremely high. Explaining was something only those with low strength would do. Strength was everything. The bigger the fist, the bigger the reason. Even if it was really a misunderstanding, under the watchful eyes of so many people, they couldn't bring themselves to lose face like this. Exciting? Satisfying? There's more exciting later. This show hasn't reached its climax yet, right? Jun Dashao moved and followed up soundlessly. If he didn't finish watching this show, Jun Moxie would definitely not be able to sleep. After all, he'd personally directed and led the show of the Three Holy Lands and the Misty Mansion, and it had finally begun. That battle of the Chun family could only be said to be a warm-up. But now, as long as they fought, the level of the situation would be completely different, because the leaders of the Misty Mansion and the Three Holy Lands had all made their moves. The meaning was completely different, and this time, it was a conflict that was really hard to resolve. Why? The answer was simple. Regardless of the free and natural physique, or Hai Wuya and He Zhiqiu's weapons, they were all caused by Jun Moxie. As long as Jun Dashao didn't come out to turn himself in, then the victims of these cases would always be the scapegoat, and they would never be able to clear their names. And would Jun Dashao turn himself in? The answer was obvious. This fellow had gone through so many hardships and coincidences to obtain such a glorious result. How could he possibly destroy his own foundation? As a result, there were exactly 10 Saint Emperors involved, and everyone suffered a tragedy together. How many holy emperors were there in the world? Although he didn't know the exact number of people in the Misty Mansion from the outside world, including Chao Guofeng and the others, there definitely wouldn't be more than 30, and all of them were old antiques. Now, this was a war that involved 10 holy emperors. It was like half the sky had collapsed. Moreover, regardless of whether or not there would be any real casualties in this battle, the originally shaky partnership between the Three Holy Lands and the Misty Mansion would also be terminated. It would be announced that it would be completely dissolved, and there would be no possibility of it being re-established in the short term. From now on, the Three Holy Lands would only be the Three Holy Lands, and the Misty Mansion would only be the Misty Mansion. And this was the result that Jun Moxie had been longing for even in his dreams. Otherwise, why would he spend so much effort to arrange all of this? For the sake of today, only God knew how many brain cells Jun Moxie had sacrificed. The relationship between the Three Holy Lands and the Misty Mansion. When the envoy from the Misty Mansion had appeared in Blizzard Silver City, Jun Moxie had already seen through it. After all, these four families were all passed down from the same ancestor. Once they faced the outside world, they would definitely naturally join forces. And Jun Moxie had only offended the Three Holy Lands, but he had yet to pose any real threat to the Misty Mansion. The Three Holy Lands were easy to deal with, but the Misty Mansion was relatively more difficult, because that place was too mysterious, as if it didn't belong to this space at all. Everyone knew of its existence, but other than the people in the Misty Mansion, no one else could enter. For thousands of years, no outsider had ever been able to enter the Misty Mansion, unlike the Three Holy Lands, who were unable to move outside. Jun Moxie going against the Three Holy Lands was an inevitable result. If the Three Holy Lands were to be in danger, the Misty Mansion would definitely intervene, regardless of whether they had sufficient reason or not. They would definitely not sit and watch the Three Holy Lands perish. And this was what Jun Moxie was most afraid of. Without breaking the alliance between these four parties, he would not act rashly no matter what. Because if the alliance of these four parties was really serious, they would definitely have the ability to completely erase the Tian Fa forest from this world. With this kind of powerful strength, even the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters would be sealed away for hundreds of years, let alone the fledgling Jun Moxie. So, even though Jun Dashao was filled with hatred and resentment, he did not dare to jump out and become a target. He only dared to sneak attacks, and if it was not possible, he would escape and hide. He never dared to face them head-on, all for the sake of the Misty Mansion, his biggest taboo. With regards to the unknown, Jun Moxie had always been more cautious than anyone else. He had planned this chain of plans for a long time, but he never had the chance to execute it. This time, he finally got the chance, and it was a golden opportunity that only came once in a blue moon. If the alliance of these four parties did not have the misty mansion, Jun Daxiao would really have nothing to worry about. He could even make use of it at a crucial moment. If he really could not win, he could just hide in the Tian Fa forest, and the three holy lands could only watch helplessly. What a pleasant thing it was. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, and when the enemy's friend becomes his enemy, he would be even more ruthless. Young Master Jun carried a carefree and complacent air as he flew forward in stealth mode. In fact, in a place where no one could see him, he even shook his buttocks, causing waves to roll down his buttocks. When he arrived at the side of the Lotus Pond 100 miles away from Chrysanthemum City, he saw that the four people were already fighting fiercely, and the battle was already in full swing. So intense. It's definitely more exciting than those blockbusters from my previous life, a real visual treat. Jun Daxiao carefully chose a place with better feng shui and squatted down, breathing in the fresh night air deeply, feeling extremely satisfied. The four people in the middle of the battle were by Qi Feng, He Qiu, Chao Guofeng, and Hai Wuya. The four of them were fighting barehanded, not using any weapons. Hai Wuya and He Qiu's luggage had been taken away by Jun Daxiao, so they could not use it even if they wanted to. As for Bai Qi Feng and Chao Guofeng, they were not willing to take advantage of them. One had to know that Chao Guofeng had already reached the third-level Holy Emperor realm, and his true strength was far above anyone here. Even if it was a one-on-one battle, it would be considered as bullying the weak. If he fought barehanded with his weapon, that would really be too despicable. And the other 5 holy emperors from the Misty Mansion were watching the battle from the side, all of them eager to give it a try. Just from the current situation, Hai Wuya and He Qiu would probably not be able to avoid a tragic end tonight. Jun Daxiao watched from the side with a clear conscience. He felt that this time, he would definitely be able to gain a huge advantage by sitting on the mountain and watching the tigers fight. 2 holy emperors against 7 holy emperors. And one of the holy emperors from the Misty Mansion side was a third-level holy emperor whose strength far surpassed theirs. With such a comparison of strength, there was basically no suspense at all, right? Of course, if the holy emperor wanted to escape wholeheartedly, then even if the 7 holy emperors from the Misty Mansion joined hands, they would not be able to stop a single one of them. But the problem now was that these 9 people had already gone mad with anger. They needed to vent, a ferocious vent. The battle became more and more intense, as if it would not stop until one side was dead. Right now, Jun Daxiao was very happy in his heart. Damn it, when you guys finish venting, you'll realize that even if you don't die, you'll at least be covered in wounds, and your stamina will be greatly depleted. And of the 10 stops of inner chi, at least 95% will be gone. At that time, it will be the time for young master, this third-level venerable, to show his might. Of course, if all 9 of them were exhausted at the same time. Such a great thing. Jun Daxiao only thought about it for a moment. He did not expect it to become a reality, because the difficulty of this matter was too high, and the requirements for Hai Wuya and He Qiu were too high, and it was really unrealistic. A series of loud rumbling sounds could be heard one after another. Sand and pebbles were sent flying, and the sky was obscured. Jun Imo Xie was squatting on a tree not far away. It seemed as if he was watching a classic kung fu movie. He was grinning from ear to ear. The only fly in the ointment was that these fellows were fighting silently, and there was actually no sound of cursing. This made Jun Daxiao feel like he was watching a pantomime, and this was perhaps the only fly in the ointment. This kind of thinking was pure nonsense. If a holy emperor expert were to fight and curse at the same time, would that still be the holy emperor? Although the cause of this battle and the process of it all seemed rather nonsensical. Bam! A sound that was obviously emitted by 2 palms that were facing each other suddenly rang out, Following that, an abnormally sharp whistling sound seemed to ring out in the air. The intense strength chi instantly surged in all directions, like countless sharp arrows, suddenly shooting out in all directions. Following that, two muffled groans rang out at the same time. Bai Chi Feng and He Ji Qiu both retreated at the same time, but at the same time, they changed their direction from retreating to advancing. The intensity of the battle was about to rise again. And just at this moment, He Ji Qiu's arrow-like body suddenly slowed down in the air. His arms and legs spread out at the same time, and his palms instantly clasped together, chanting slowly, "The autumn wind decides life and death. Heaven and earth are boundless." In the instant that this sentence was said, the originally harmonious spring weather in the entire space changed in an instant. The originally gentle spring breeze seemed to have turned into a cold autumn wind filled with bleakness and sorrow in that instant. He Ji Qiu's unique Xian Qi spread out in the air, reaching far and wide. As long as it spread out, the lush grass there would turn into a withered yellow the moment it came into contact with the Xian Qi. The nearby lush trees that had just regained their vitality, with their green leaves swaying in the wind, all turned into a withered yellow color as if the late autumn had suddenly arrived. Then, they gradually left the branches, falling one by one. When they first left the branches, there was still some green, but by the time they floated in the air, they had already turned into golden leaves dancing wildly. Looking at the yellow leaves dancing in the air, the ground was a patch of withered yellow, a desolate sight to behold. And in the air, amidst the falling yellow leaves, a figure in white robes and a figure in hemp robes were approaching each other with extreme speed. Looking at this strange scene, Jun Moxie actually felt a sense of transcendence and beauty. He couldn't help but think of a poem from the Tang Dynasty in his heart. Shaking his head, he recited silently, "The endless falling trees rustle down. The endless Yangtze River rolls and rolls, truly beautiful to the point of bubbling." However, amidst this beauty, there was actually a thick and desolate killing intent, a desolate and continuous killing intent. 10,000ly sorrowful autumn. He Ji Qiu's unique technique. Today is Mom's birthday, so she went home and came back quite late. Very sorry. There's also another matter. On the way, I received a call from the sub-moderator saying that the group had suddenly disbanded for some reason, gave me a fright. Chapter 857. The second chapter. I'm really trashed to the extreme. 5 hours to write one chapter. My back is hurting. As the scenery around him changed, He Ji Qiu's body also expanded rapidly like a balloon. His black hair danced in the air, and his lean face was filled with killing intent. Boundless colors of autumn. Jun Mo Xie immediately understood. He Ji Qiu's 10,000 miles of sorrowful autumn wasn't just a superhuman emotional influence. He could also extract the vitality of all the green plants for his own use when he activated the 10,000 miles of sorrowful autumn. This was equivalent to being able to replenish his Xian Qi at any time. In this way, he would naturally be undefeatable forever. But his opponent did not have this kind of advantage. Even if their strengths were equal, under such circumstances, the victor was naturally clear. Or rather, the longer the battle dragged on, the greater the advantage He Ji Qiu had. Bai Chi Feng's white robes fluttered in the wind as he shouted, "Brilliant! Wondrous! What a good 10,000ly sorrowful autumn! Look at my 10,000ly craggy mountains!" His palms danced rapidly, and in an instant, Bai Chi Feng's body disappeared into a gust of wind, as if he had completely disappeared. Instead, the ground suddenly became uneven, and small man-made hills rose from the ground. Every single one of them was sharp and steep, like a cliff. At the same time, countless huge rocks fell from the sky with a loud rumble. 10,000ly autumn scenery is boundless. How can it be covered by a mere mountain? Overestimating your own abilities. He Ji Qiu laughed coldly. The autumn wind howled, and the boundless heaven and earth were filled with desolation. Although Bai Chi Feng had also activated his unique Xian skill and activated the unique energy of heaven and earth that he had comprehended, causing a huge change. But in this battle, he was clearly at a disadvantage. He Qiu, who had activated the 10,000ly autumn, clearly had the upper hand. Using the unique attribute of his unique skill, he was truly boundless. In the instant that the two of them clashed, they disappeared into the strange scenery that suddenly appeared. But the autumn colors were boundless, covering the sky and covering the earth. Bai Chi Feng's craggy ravines were already at a disadvantage, and he was only barely holding on. At this point, not only was Bai Chi Feng clear, even the Holy Emperor beside him could see it clearly. There are still the 5 great Holy Emperors of the Misty Mansion here. As long as any one of them made a move, they could easily turn the tables on Bai Chi Feng. Even defeating him would only be a matter of a few moves. But the battle between the Holy Emperors involved the reputation and prestige of each party. No matter what, as long as someone interfered, both parties would not accept it. Especially the disadvantaged side, they would rather die in battle. In the current situation, although Bai Chi Feng was at a disadvantage, he was still far from being defeated. But if he wanted to turn the situation around, the only one who could intervene was Chao Guofeng, who was also in the battle. No one else could. As expected, Chao Guofeng let out a long roar, his voice shaking the skies. He, who had always been experienced and steady, had not used his full strength in the exchange just now. Although the alliance between the misty, illusory manor and the 3 holy lands had collapsed because of today's matter, but the relationship between the two sides had not reached the level of being enemies. So Chao Guofeng was able to create a situation where they were evenly matched in terms of strength. Otherwise, with his strength as a 3rd-level Saint Emperor, even if he might not be able to defeat Hai Wuya immediately, he would undoubtedly have the upper hand. But at this moment, Bai Chi Feng was completely suppressed by He Qiu, and it was hard for him to turn the tables. And He Qiu hated Bai Chi Feng to the core, and as long as there was a chance, he would definitely not allow Bai Chi Feng to live. It could be said that although Chao Guofeng and Hai Wuya were having a leisurely battle, it was a true battle of life and death between Bai Chi Feng and He Qiu. Life and death were decided by a hair's breadth. Chao Guofeng was forced into a corner, afraid that something would happen to Bai Chi Feng, so he could only use his true strength, because only by defeating Hai Wuya as soon as possible could he save Bai Chi Feng from his predicament. Just as Chao Guofeng unleashed his full strength, the battle situation underwent a shocking change because of this eruption of strength from Chao Guofeng. It could be said that it was a fundamental change. This was no longer a battle of wills, but a true battle of life and death. A battle of life and death between the Misty Mansion and the Holy Lands. "Brother Hai, pardon me." Chao Guofeng let out a long roar, and the wind and clouds changed color. Then his body turned, and the entire sky was filled with Chao Guofeng's silhouettes. And an unprecedented pressure as heavy as a mountain made it difficult for Hai Wuya to even move his body. However, at this moment, Hai Wuya also let out a long howl, exploding forth with his strongest profound energy, breaking free of his bindings. On the other side, He Qiu, who had the upper hand, suddenly let out a loud laugh. The two of them suddenly flashed, and in an instant they actually converged together. Hai Wuya laughed mockingly. "The Misty Mansion, as expected, wants to put the two of us to death. Chao Guofeng, you've finally made clear the stance of the Misty Mansion. The two of us will not accompany you anymore. Those few weapons and other things, I'll leave them for you to play with, ha. The mountains are high and the rivers are long. We'll meet again one day." Amidst the long laughter, the two figures flashed a few times like phantoms, then disappeared. At the same time, the lotus pond that had been abandoned for a long time at the side of the battlefield suddenly rolled up with a loud boom, turning the entire place upside down. The endless amount of mud that had accumulated for hundreds of years was like a huge umbrella, covering the space within a radius of 1,000 zhang. Thick and dense, it pressed down like a dark cloud. All the people within this area were facing the danger of being covered by the mud. Hai Wuya and He Ji-chio laughed coldly at the same time. Then there was no more sound. Obviously, after the two of them launched this disgusting final attack, they used it as a cover and quickly retreated from this area. These two were old monsters that had lived for hundreds of years. How could they be swayed by their emotions and fight a battle that they had no chance of winning? This matter was still considered a test of the attitude of the Misty Mansion towards the Holy Lands. If Chao Guofeng and Bai Chi Feng really killed them, then it would really confirm the wild ambitions of the Misty Mansion. At that time, the two of them would break out of the encirclement at all costs. In fact, the two of them, who were experienced and far-sighted, had already prepared such a path of retreat when they chose this battlefield from start. Old Ginger was still spicier. In terms of scheming, the Misty Mansion that had secluded itself from the world for so long was much worse. And while they were determined to break out of the encirclement, the people of the Misty Mansion did not have the intention to kill them all. Even Bai Chi Feng only wanted to teach He Ji-chio a lesson and did not have the intention to kill him. But their sudden departure, the battle ended, and the instant they reported it, caused the misunderstanding between the three Holy Lands and the Misty Mansion to be irreconcilable. With the departure of the two of them, the relationship between the four factions was completely severed. Jun Dashao, who was also in the area covered by the mud, was instantly dumbfounded by this sudden change of events, and he cursed in his heart. Chao Guofeng and the rest all had extremely profound Xian cultivation to protect themselves, and even had the time to use their movement techniques to dodge. Naturally, they did not have to worry about anything, and would definitely not be touched by the mud. But Jun Dashao's side could not do so. He was currently in the yin-yang escape, watching the show, waiting for a situation where both sides were injured, and then he would find a chance to take advantage of it. With this rain of mud, if he used the art of unlocking heaven's fortune to protect himself, no matter how careful he was, Chao Guofeng and the rest would still discover his existence under the influence of the aura. Then, his plan would be in danger of failing on the verge of success, and his own safety would also be in danger. This was the joint attack of the 7 Holy Emperors. Even the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters might not be able to deal with it, so he could only choose to endure it. Feeling the extremely smelly mud splattering on his body, Jun Moxie almost retched. This kind of mud that had accumulated for hundreds of years, especially when it was originally a lotus pond. There were lotus roots that had rotted for God knows how many generations, and there were even some rotting corpses inside. That stench, it was easy to imagine. Even with Jun Moxie's temperament, as a former assassin who had already experienced too much filth and unforeseen events, it was still difficult for him to bear. Young Master Jun hadn't even had the time to wake up from his wonderful dream of being in control of everything when he encountered this. But he didn't dare to move. He didn't even dare to move, and could only allow this stinky mud to cover his entire body. He wanted to cry, but no tears came out. My grand plan, it's all gone. Dreams were always beautiful, but when the beautiful dream was gone, reality was often very cruel and tragic. After who knew how long, when Jun Dashao opened his eyes again, he found that the scene was already empty. Hai Wuya and He Ji-chio had disappeared without a trace, and Chao Guofeng and the rest were also nowhere to be seen. This was very reasonable. Chao Guofeng and the rest of the 7 Holy Emperors were originally all people who lived like princes. He Ji-chio and Hai Wu yet already left. How could they still stay here and smell the filth? Fortunately, Jun Dashao's yin-yang escape art was destroyed by this unexpected mud. If they stayed for a moment longer, Jun Dashao would really be in a tragic state. In the silence of the night, only young Master Jun was covered in mud as he squatted on a tree, looking like a mud monkey. How could it be like this? How unlucky. Not only did I lose the chance to beat a drowning dog, but I've also become a mud monkey. How could a perfect plan turn out like this? What is this? Jun Dashao looked up to the sky and sighed. Other than sowing discord, it seemed like he would not have any other gains. Extremely depressed, he jumped down from the tree and circulated his chi to shake off the mud on his body. However, the stench still lingered for 3 days. Jun Moxie cursed as he flew, searching for a river. No matter what, he had to take a good bath. It's really too smelly. The filth that came out from my body when I was cleansing my muscles and marrow can't even compare to 1/10,000th of this smell. In this life, Jun Dashao's life had always been smooth sailing. This was the first time he had encountered such a terrible situation. After running for a full 40 to 50 miles, he finally saw a sparkling light in front of him. A clear river flowed forward happily with a splashing sound. The river was not deep, only reaching up to his knees. It was more appropriate to call it a small river or a small stream. Without any hesitation, young Master Jun leaped into the river like a fish and dove in. With a boom, he created a huge pit that was 3 to 5 feet deep at the bottom of the river. All the clear river water flowed into this newly formed pit. Young Master Jun quickly stripped himself naked. Then, he dipped his head into the water and washed himself with all his might. But the moment he stuck his head out of the water, he could still smell that unbearable stench in his nostrils. After washing himself a few times, he finally felt that it was almost done. The smell seemed to have become much fresher. Jun Moxie lay naked in a newly created large bath. He took a few more breaths and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Not only could that set of clothes not be worn, it was even more unbearable. That smell was really... With a thought, Jun Moxie took out another set of clothes from the Hongjun Pagoda. Only when he saw the clothes did he suddenly remember. F***CK. Why am I so stupid? The 9 nether first young master's inheritance, the warm jade core silk, haven't been distributed yet. Ever since he returned, things had simply become a chain. He had actually forgotten about this important matter. If he had distributed the treasured clothes earlier, perhaps Snake King wouldn't have. Sigh, my brain must have gone haywire. However, if those treasured clothes had been distributed at that time, would the Snake King have had a share of them? Thinking of this, Jun Mo Xia suddenly felt a deep sense of guilt in his heart. After blaming himself for a while, Jun Moxie walked to the shore naked and bathed in the moonlight. He slowly put on his clothes. As he put on his clothes, he thought about his next step. Just as he was halfway dressed, he suddenly heard a faint voice. "You are Jun Moxie?" This voice seemed to be the voice of a woman. The voice was unusually indifferent, but he couldn't tell the age of the person. Who? Jun Moxie was surprised to hear this voice. His body didn't move, and he didn't show any signs of abnormality. He continued to put on his clothes at the same speed and asked without raising his head. This was his true reflection. As the king of assassins, the most important thing was to remain calm in the face of danger. No matter what happened, he must not be disturbed. The more unexpected the situation, the more he must not panic. Otherwise, the consequences would only be worse. On a tree by the river, a light snort could be heard. Jun Moxie looked up and saw the elegant figure of a woman standing on the treetop. Her slender figure was graceful, and a sword hilt could be seen on her slender shoulders. She stood on the highest leaf of the treetop, her body moving up and down lightly. She was like a fairy from the jade pool, riding the wind, but unwilling to step into the mortal world and be tainted by the mortal world. So she stayed on the treetop. Chapter 858. Because this woman's entire body was in a state of complete stillness. Seeing that Jun Moxie was looking at her, the woman raised her face to look at the crescent moon in the sky, as if she was talking to herself. Yes, apart from Jun Moxie, I'm afraid there's no other prodigy in this world. Reaching the 3rd level of the great master realm at the age of 18. It's really shocking and amazing. May I ask who this young lady is? How do you know this Jun? Jun Moxie smiled lightly, sat down on the ground, and asked in a leisurely manner. But he had already made preparations in secret, so that he would immediately escape into the Hongjun Pagoda if there were any signs of trouble. Only safety was the real priority. Young lady? The woman chuckled softly, but her voice seemed to contain an indescribable desolation. Her dress fluttered in the wind, dancing in the air. Under the moonlight, her slender waist appeared even more pitiful, as if a slightly stronger gust of wind would be able to snap her slender waist. Her voice was still indifferent, and there was no emotion in it. Just now, the conflict between the Golden City of Blood and the 9 experts of the Misty Mansion was actually provoked by you? Young lady, you really know how to joke. How could I possibly have the ability to make the 9 holy emperors turn against each other? Jun Moxie's expression did not change, but he chuckled and shook his head, as if what the other party had said was very funny and ridiculous. But Jun Moxie's heart was filled with shock. Who is this woman? Why would she say such a thing? Could it be, perhaps you don't know who I am? The woman Langling laughed, her back still facing Jun Moxie, and said lightly, 800 years ago, someone called me the all-seeing Rakshasa. During the war for seizing the heavens, the concealment techniques of the strange races were useless in front of me. No one was an exception. Their concealment trick has instead become a method for me to kill them effortlessly. Jun Moxie suddenly broke out in a cold sweat, but it wasn't because of the person in front of him. It was because 800 years ago, my great-grandmother, the woman in front of him, who had a graceful figure like a young girl, was actually an old monster who had lived for so many years. Even calling her great-grandmother was not enough. At the very least, she had to be the great-grandmother of her great-grandmother. If she had participated in the war for seizing the heavens 800 years ago, wouldn't that mean that she would at least have the skills of a venerable at that time? In other words, 800 years ago, she should be 180 years old? Jun Moxie groaned in his heart. Was this the so-called 1,000-year-old banshee? 300 years ago, during the war for seizing the heavens, 15 supremacy enduring heavens of the strange races died under my hands. The result of this battle directly led to the defeat of the strange races. She chuckled lightly and said mockingly, the so-called concealment techniques of the world are all worthless in front of me. Do you think that your petty tricks can really escape my eyes? Jun Moxie, now you should understand how laughable your denial was. Miss, you are really great. You are really the greatest hero of the human race, ah? I will definitely set up a long-life memorial tablet for you when I return. I pray day and night and wish you longevity. But I really didn't do it. I don't even know what happened. You can't accuse me like this, ah. How could Jun Moxie admit that this was related to his grand plan? Besides, you said that you've lived for over 1,000 years. So you've lived for over 1,000 years? I can even say that I'm a 9-nether first young master. Would you believe me? No one has ever seen through the yin-yang escape technique since it first appeared. What do you have to say that you can see through it? Show me the evidence first. So Jun Dashao denied flatly. This young master only took a bath just now. Is that wrong? Miss, could it be that I've committed a crime by taking a bath? You really have a sharp tongue. Jun Moxie, I've always heard that although you're extreme in your actions, you're still a man who dares to take responsibility for what you've done. But I'm greatly disappointed to see you today. You're just a coward who dares to take responsibility for what you've done. There is a tinge of disappointment in the lady's indifferent tone, and her voice also became a little desolate. Miss, you're wrong. If it was really done by me, this young master will never avoid it. But if it wasn't done by me, no one could pin the blame on me. Jun Moxie revealed a wronged expression. I can't possibly have to admit to the bad things just because I've done them. What kind of logic is this? Don't you agree, miss? Jun Moxie, you still don't dare to admit to what you've done. Are you still a man? The lady kept silent for a while and said sarcastically, Speaking of this young master is even more speechless. Miss, I wasn't wearing anything when I took a bath just now. Whether I'm a man or not, do I still need to say it myself? Didn't you see such a big one? Do women have that thing? Jun Moxie chuckled and continued to act shamelessly. Since you're a 1,000-year-old demoness, this young master will play the small with you. What about it? You. Shameless. The lady's body trembled. She was so angry that her voice became sharp. Miss, we're not familiar with each other at all. You're even more shameless by framing others like this. Jun Moxie was not moved at all. He thought to himself, dealing with those shameless people from the three holy lands, if this young master was really a gentleman, I'm afraid that even my bones would have turned into ashes by now. The lady's figure flashed, and she suddenly floated up from a leaf. Then, like a weightless piece of cotton, she slowly floated down. When her 2 feet finally touched the ground, the entire process took almost a quarter of an hour. Moreover, during this period of time, she had been hovering in the air the whole time. Her movements could be said to be extremely slow. Jun Moxie's eyes narrowed. For the first time, he slightly believed what the lady had said. Just this shocking ability to hover in the air was not something that an expert of the Holy Emperor could do. Of course, the Holy Emperor could hover in the air for a period of time. He could also easily fly over 100 feet. But to slowly fall from the air and still be able to speak while hovering in the air was absolutely impossible. One had to know that hovering in the air depended on a single breath. Once he opened his mouth to speak, that breath would be released. How could he still maintain it? But this lady had done it, and she had done it so easily. The moment she landed, Jun Moxie finally saw her face clearly. This made the suspicion in Jun Moxie's heart increase by a few notches, because in front of him was obviously a beautiful lady in her 20s. She had peerless elegance. Her phoenix-like eyes were filled with power. Her jade-like nose was straight, and her cherry lips were small. Her face was fair and tender. Her hair was full of fine black. It was extremely difficult to find a single strand of white hair on her head. It was practically comparable to the beautiful hair of Dugu Xiaoi. She was just standing there, but she naturally exuded a noble demeanor. It was as if she was a bright moon high up in the sky and wouldn't allow anyone to blaspheme her. However, there was a faint blush and embarrassment on her face. It seemed that she was very embarrassed when she saw Jun Moxie bathing, and it was her embarrassment that greatly increased the suspicion in Jun Moxie's heart. How could a 1,000-year-old monster have such a tender face? But when she landed, Jun Moxie's body lightly shifted back a corresponding distance. He maintained a distance of 20 feet away from her. This was a relatively safe distance. At such a distance, as long as Jun Moxie was vigilant, it would be absolutely impossible for anyone to attack him. Because at such a distance, he could ensure that he would be able to escape into the Hongjun Pagoda at the first instance before any attack could be launched. This lady's appearance was indeed very beautiful. But to Jun Moxie, it was completely indifferent. In fact, he even had the thought of avoiding her. He couldn't settle the debt of love in his own home. If he were to get into another debt of love outside, that would be purely looking for trouble for himself. From the expressions of the ladies, Jun Moxie could clearly see that, although this world was a male-dominated world where one could have multiple wives and concubines, his few female confidants, whether it was Guanqing Han, Dugu Xiaoi, or Mei Xuan, were all extremely possessive and jealous. None of these women would say it on the surface, but in their hearts, they might not really not care about it. It was just that it was not convenient for them to show it in certain situations. In addition, these few relationships all had their own reasons for not abandoning each other. That was why they barely got along with each other, and even accepted each other as they continued to get along with each other. Even so, Jun Moxie only had sex with Guanqing Han when he was under the influence of an aphrodisiac. After that, all of them kept a close eye on him. They did not give Jun Daxiao any chance to show off at all. As the saying goes, 1 monk carries water to drink, 2 monks carry water to drink, 3 monks have no water to drink. Jun Daxiao was now in the awkward situation of having no water to drink, because there were too many monks in the house. Most people only had 1 tigress in their house, but Jun Daxiao had a few in his backyard, and they were all extremely fierce super tigresses. At this time, if Jun Moxie were to bring back another tigress, it was foreseeable that a war in the harem would be inevitable. So when he saw this beautiful woman, young Master Jun did not think about the other party's age or seniority. His first thought was, "You must not fall in love with me." If there's anything you like about me, you must tell me. I will definitely change. Chapter 859. Oofed. Since you were watching from the side, why didn't you stop me on the spot? Wouldn't that be more refreshing? You're only saying it now. You're obviously trying to make me a scapegoat. June Moxie snorted. He didn't believe her at all. Moreover, this woman's words were rather presumptuous, just like a little girl's whimsical words. If I clarify everything, I'll let you go? This is extremely naive. Even if you use your but to think, it's impossible. June Moxie would never go back, and after the Holy Emperor finds out, it's even more impossible for him to let June Moxie go. Explanation? What else do I need to explain? If you're really so sure, you should have just watched from the side. As long as you catch me on the spot, wouldn't that be better than any explanation? Why do you have to do something superfluous after the fact? I naturally have my reasons for not stopping you on the spot, just now. The woman's face reddened, and she said somewhat angrily. Her snow-white and tender cheeks puffed up, but then she realized that she seemed to have relapsed. She hurriedly coughed and resumed her elegant posture. What June Moxie said was undoubtedly the most effective method. How could she not know that? It was because of some rather special reasons that she couldn't and didn't dare to make a move immediately, which allowed June Moxie to have his way. Now, because of this battle, the harmony between the two sides had been greatly damaged and even completely severed. Even if she jumped out now and said, "Both sides stop fighting, all of this is the plot of that little thief June Moxie," without any evidence, who would believe her? Moreover, in everyone's hearts, June Moxie was already a dead man who had been killed by Jean Mubai for more than a month. What could a dead man do? A person who had been dead for a long time suddenly appeared, and with the strength of a venerable level 3, he schemed against the 10 holy emperors. This was too absurd. Therefore, she was also very helpless and sullen. However, in June Moxie's eyes, the girl's current expression gave him a strange thought of, so she's just a little girl. June Mo, could not be blamed for this. After all, her current expression was no different from that of a naive little girl. Therefore, June Moxie was becoming more and more skeptical of what she said. As his thoughts flashed, he rolled his eyes and decided to tease her. "Let me help you tell me your reason. It's obvious that you don't like them, so you set them up to fight. I realize that not only are you good at bragging, but you're also the one who started this conspiracy. It's you. It must be you. Only a peerless expert from 300 years ago, or 800 years ago, would be able to toy with so many experts of the Holy Emperor. I finally understood. I really understand now." June Dashao had a look of realization on his face. Suddenly, he said angrily, "It must be you who stole Hai Wuya and He Ji Chio's weapons, causing the conflict between them to escalate, and even causing them to fight. You really have evil intentions. Why did you do this? Why?" June Dashao's expression was a little pained. "For the sake of the peace of the continent, for the sake of the people of the world, the 3 holy lands have protected the world for tens of thousands of years. They are the heroes of the Xian continent. They are the role models of the human race. And you actually wanted to use such a despicable and shameless method to frame them. What are your intentions? Could it be that you're actually a supporter of the strange races, scheming to destroy the peace of the continent? The mouth of a green bamboo snake, the sting of a wasp's tail. Both are acceptable, but the most poisonous is a woman's heart. I've finally seen it for myself today. A little girl actually has such a malicious heart, scheming to frame the heroes of our Xian continent. This kind of behavior is really infuriating. It causes one to sigh. Why? Why is it like this, ah? The education system now, what's wrong with it? To actually... AI. June Dashao shook his head and sighed. In the end, he let out a long sigh that was filled with grief and hatred. You. The girl's eyes were wide open, and she was so angry that she stuttered. Her face was flushed red, but her mouth was tied up, and she couldn't say anything. She had lived for thousands of years, but this was the first time she had seen such a shameless human in this world. He had obviously been caught red-handed by her, but he still managed to make a false countercharge. Not only did he push all the blame onto her, he even managed to push all the blame onto her. He had actually become a defender of the human race. What kind of person is this? Shamelessness, there should be a limit to it, right? June Moxie, you don't have to waste your time trying to quibble. She took a deep breath and finally calmed herself down. However, her chest was still heaving up and down violently. She forced herself to speak in her usual tone and said indifferently, I witnessed everything that happened here with my own eyes. It's useless no matter what you say. As long as I capture you and search your body for their weapons, all the misunderstandings will be revealed. June Moxie laughed heartily. He laughed so hard that tears seemed to be flowing out of his eyes. He rocked back and forth. You said that you've lived for over 1,000 years, right? You call Hai Wuya and the others little brats, right? If that's the case, then I can make a very simple deduction. Your strength is definitely far above those holy emperors, right? Of course, with their measly cultivation, how can they be mentioned in the same breath as me? The woman snorted. She raised her head slightly and spoke with a proud but reserved voice. She thought that June Moxie finally understood how terrifying she was. She could not help but feel relieved. She even felt a little smug. If you agree with my first deduction, then let me make a second deduction. They were all strong, holy emperor. I'm just a mere level 3 venerable. Since you're stronger than all of them, and you saw me plotting against them, why didn't you capture me and expose my plot? Based on this deduction, perhaps you have an ulterior motive? June Moxie smiled. What deduction? It's all wrong. If it wasn't for that bastard 9 serenities and 14 masters paying attention to me, how could I not have captured you on the spot? Do you really think that your strange tricks are that amazing? The woman's eyebrows couldn't help but frown as she said somewhat angrily after his words poked at her sore spot. 9 serenities and 14 masters? He also interfered in this matter? This time, June Moxie was really shocked. Could it be that that fellow had not left, but had been following me all along? The woman snorted. Her pretty face was filled with uncertainty. This woman's name was Xiaoying. As for what she said, there was not the slightest bit of falsehood. She was born with the all-seeing eye. It was also commonly known as the yin-yang eye that could see through all evil in the world. As she gradually grew up, especially after her Xian cultivation was successful, this innate skill also gradually leveled up and improved along with her Xian cultivation. Coincidentally, a senior from the Holy Land suddenly discovered that Xiao Ying's innate all-seeing eye could actually have such a function. Thus, he imitated the movement technique of the strange races to test this little girl at that time. The result was self-evident. She could completely see through the strange race's escape technique. That senior was overjoyed. From then on, Xiao Ying's incomparably glorious, but also extremely miserable and lonely life began. It was precisely because her all-seeing eye was a great weapon against the strange races that the Heaven Saint Palace had recruited her long ago and made her their guardian. They even spared no expense and allowed her to consume the 7-colored holy fruit and exquisite lotus once every 500 years to maintain her vitality so that she could face the war for seizing the heavens. Right now, she was already 1,100 years old. She was truly a 1,000-year-old demoness. One could imagine that consuming the 7-colored holy fruit and exquisite lotus once every 500 years would allow her to maintain her eternal youth and increase her Xian Qi by 500 years. Her current cultivation realm had already reached an unimaginable level. Up until now, she had already consumed the 7-colored holy fruit and exquisite lotus thrice. Adding on her 1,100 years of pure Xian Qi and the 1,500 years of Xian Qi, she had a total of almost 2,600 years of Xian Qi. Just based on the depth of her Xian Qi, she was already the number 1 person in the world. Even the 9 serenities and 14 masters would not be able to match up to her. However, there were advantages and disadvantages. Although she was born with the ability to see through all the escape techniques in the world, this ability also had a very obvious weakness. That was, when she used the all-seeing eye, the exhaustion was more than 10 times that of normal battles. Every time she used it, she would need to recuperate for a very long time. In the two war for seizing the heavens, she had overused the all-seeing eye, causing her vitality to be greatly depleted. Furthermore, the all-seeing eye was an ability that harmed both herself and others. If not for the war for seizing the heavens, she would have long since crippled her all-seeing eye. This kind of ability was naturally incomparably powerful, but if one were to put themselves in her shoes, they would understand. The all-seeing eye was able to see through all sorts of evil. One could imagine how a place that was completely empty in the eyes of an ordinary person would be bustling with activity in her all-seeing eye. And these people should not belong to this world in the first place, because they were all people who were already dead. That kind of feeling was enough to drive one crazy. How could a young girl endure such a thing? How could she endure it? Not to mention the fact that she had lived like this for over 1,000 years. It could be said that up until now, Xiaoying had not gone crazy and had not completely broken down. Her mental state could be said to be extremely tough. Furthermore, for the all-seeing eye, and for the war for seizing the heavens, Xiaoying had even lost the most basic happiness of an ordinary girl, getting married and starting a family. She cannot, because the basic requirement of the all-seeing eye was to maintain an absolutely pure body, absolute purity. The moment she lost her virginity, the all-seeing eye's ability would also completely disappear. So the emotions that ordinary girls had to go through, love, lovey-dovey under the moonlight, this was the most common thing in this book. But Xiaoying had no fate. She could only continue to be alone, maintaining a cold heart. It could be said that this girl called Xiaoying was the one who had sacrificed the most for the Xian continent, for the people of the world. Today, I finally managed to contact Modesty. It turns out that this fellow went to a certain website last night and discovered that his account had been logged in from another place. He hurriedly searched for it, reset the password, encrypted it, and bound it to his phone. Then he discovered that there was not a single Q coin left on his account. It was said that he also suffered some other losses. All the members of the group had left, and many of his friends were in the blacklist. But although this bachelor had been deleted from his friends list, it seems like he still left some face for me. The moment I spoke, I entered the list of strangers. It's good that I'm not in the blacklist. This fellow Modesty wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Guys, some websites cannot be accessed. Although there are ancient war movies with and without horses there, but it's still better to read at starting point safe. New group number, 121306926. It was still a super group of 500 people. The conditions were the same as before. Starting point users who were kindergarten level 2 and above could join. Chapter 860. Third update. Fourth, I'm working harder. She watched helplessly as her loved ones went through birth, old age, sickness, and death. She watched as her descendants gave birth to children and enjoyed a peaceful life under the moonlight. In the end, she turned back into dust. Just like that, the cycle repeated endlessly. On the other hand, he could only bitterly guard the vast world, silently and solitarily passing day after day, year after year, and even lifetimes after lifetimes for a beautiful lady like her. What kind of cruel thing was this? But she had no choice but to endure, because the war for seizing the heavens needed her. The world needed her. If there was no Xiaoying in the war for seizing the heavens, who knew how many more people would die? In fact, they might have already failed once, or even more than once. In order for Xiaoying to maintain a peaceful state of mind, she usually spent her time alone on the peak of the pillar of Heaven's mountains. And in that kind of high and cold area, even ghosts would not be able to reach there, being isolated from the world for a long period of time. Although she was already 1,000-years-old lady, her state of mind was still as calm as water, pure as ever. It could be said that this 1,000-year-old senior was not even comparable to a young lady who had just stepped into the world, because, in her memory, she had only been in the mortal world for a few short years. And that was only when she was young. Ever since she had grown up, She had always been isolated from the world to train, and then the war for seizing the heavens, and then returning to train again. This time, the Heaven Saint Palace had sent people out to secretly patrol and protect the people of the Holy Lands. For some reason, Xiao Ying, who had always been aloof from worldly affairs, unexpectedly volunteered to go, and her attitude was exceptionally firm. Before this, she had already stayed alone on the Pillar of Heaven's mountains for close to 400 years, left with no other choice. And knowing that Xiao Ying's all-seeing eye had improved along with her cultivation, and had now reached a profound realm where she could control it freely, he could only agree to her request. Because of this, he sent 2 more experts to accompany her. Nothing must happen to Xiao Ying. After Xiao Ying arrived at Chrysanthemum City, the innocent her only knew that she had to do her job well, and she was extremely responsible. Her divine sense had been following the holy emperors of the 3 holy lands. Therefore, the moment there was any abnormality, she would rush over immediately. When she arrived, it was when Jun Moxie had tricked by Qi Feng and stolen Hai Wu Ya's luggage. She saw that there was clearly no one around, but such a strange thing happened. She subconsciously thought of the strange tribe's invisibility trick and activated her divine vision. He saw Jun Dashao's sneaky movements. The yin-yang escape art was one of the top techniques in the world. If it was really at a high level, even the divine vision would not be able to detect it. But Jun Dashao's current level was still too shallow. Facing Xiao Ying's over 2,500 years of cultivation and the extremely powerful divine vision, the yin-yang escape art that had never failed before finally failed for the first time. Xiao Ying understood the crux of the matter and was just about to give a warning to expose Jun Dashao's scheme when she heard a sinister voice. "Do not make a sound. If you accidentally make any sound, this young master will have no choice but to destroy a flower." At the same time, a cold 9-nether frost blade was pressed against her neck. The moment this voice came out, Xiao Ying instantly knew that this person was the biggest threat to the 3 holy lands, the 9 serenities and 14 masters. Xiao Ying did not doubt the identity of the person behind her at all, because only the 9 serenities and 14 masters would be able to use a special weapon like the 9-nether frost blade. And only the 9 serenities and 14 masters would have such an extremely cold Xian Yin Qi on him. This made her extremely uncomfortable. And the most important point was that with Xiao Ying's own strength, other than the 9 serenities and 14 masters, there was really no one who could suppress her. Even if it was a sneak attack, it would not work. Xiao Ying still had this confidence, and now she had obviously fallen into the hands of her biggest enemy. This was also because she had too little experience in the martial world. Otherwise, even with Xiao Ying's strength, although she was still not a match for the 9 serenities and 14 masters, and the 2 of them were not even on the same level, with Xiao Ying's over 2,000 years of pure cultivation, there was no way that someone could sneak up behind her without her noticing, let alone subduing her so easily. It was really because when she saw the various actions of Jun Moxie, in addition to the heated and hostile atmosphere in the room, all of her attention had been attracted, and she could not be distracted for a moment. In addition, she was already extremely angry with Jun Dashao's sinister actions, which was why she was so easily subdued by the 9 serenities and 14 masters. Don't move, just watch carefully. This is a rare show that rarely happens. If you spoil it, this young master will be greatly regretful, said the 9 serenities and 14 masters. Behind Xiao Ying's back, a pair of eyes shone with great interest as he praised. "This brat is truly sinister and evil enough. This young master simply likes this brat to death. Do it well, kill those hypocrites." Why can't this young master think of such an interesting idea? Just as Jun Moxie had guessed, the 9 serenities and 14 masters had indeed been following behind Jun Moxie. How could the 9 serenities and 14 masters not have any suspicions when such a young man suddenly appeared beside him? He had to dig out Jun Moxie's roots no matter what. With the powerful strength of the 9 serenities and 14 masters and the huge gap between them and Jun Moxie, he naturally became the only person in the world who could follow Jun Moxie without being discovered by Master Da Xiao. Thus, Jun Da Xiao played his tricks in front, and the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters followed behind him like a shadow. The more he watched, the more he liked this kid. He felt that this kid was sinister and ruthless, and really suited his taste. After that, he'd seen Junmo Xian mysteriously disappear many times. Then he'd successfully made use of the so-called free and natural physique to turn Zhanmu Bai and the misty illusory manner into enemies. Then he'd once again caused Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu to completely break off relations with the misty illusory manner. All these actions made the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters more and more interested in this kid. Although he saw him use his name to scare Zhanmu Bai, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters didn't have any intention of exposing him. It was as if he was watching a show along the way, and his heart was filled with satisfaction. Also, when Jun Moxie suddenly took out the 9 Serenities' Frostblade, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters finally confirmed one thing. This guy was definitely related to that 9 Firmament First Master. This made the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters finally understand why this guy could recognize them, and why he had such a strange and miraculous invisibility technique. The source of everything was that 9 Firmament First Master. The mention of this name made the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters feel a bit of a pain in the ass. I'm rank 14th, and you actually dare to call yourself number 1? I'm the 9 Serenities, which is on the ground, and you're the 9 Firmament, which is in the sky. I'm the young master, and you're actually the master. Mother of asterisk Kerr, you're really taking advantage of me. But the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters couldn't do anything about it because the name 9 Firmament First Master was said to have been given by the people from the 3 Holy Lands. And the most fundamental reason was actually because of him, to let him find trouble with the 9 Firmament First Master after knowing this name. How could I, the wise and mighty 14th young master, make such a low-level mistake? So the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters definitely wouldn't do it. Even if he wanted to settle accounts, he would only settle accounts with the people from the 3 Holy Lands. They were the main culprits. Moreover, the 9 Firmament First Master had helped him break the seal previously. No matter what his original intentions were, he could still be considered half a benefactor to him. Moreover, there was an agreement between the two of them, and this junior in front of him who was using his name to commit outrages could also be considered the descendant of an old friend. Not for anything else, just for the sake of such a classic show today. It didn't matter if he impersonated me. If such a show could happen a few more times, then it wouldn't matter if he impersonated me a few more times. Moreover, what this fellow was doing was exactly what he wanted. The more thoroughly the relationship between the 3 Holy Lands and the Misty Mansion, the better. It would be best if the relationship between the 3 Holy Lands could be broken even more thoroughly after that. That would be truly satisfying that way. He could take care of them one by one. So, how could the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters allow Xiao Ying to ruin such a thing? Of course not. Xiao Ying watched helplessly as Jun Moxie caused trouble and the 9 Holy Emperors turned against each other to the point of going out to fight. Xiao Ying was so anxious that she was about to go crazy. She almost resisted with all her might. However, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters let go of her at the right time. He smacked his lips and said, "Not bad. Looks like this kid is really good at acting. I don't have to worry about the rest. I'll go back and heal my injuries and prepare for a big fight. Otherwise, it would be a pity for this kid to spend so much effort." After saying that, the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters suddenly disappeared without a trace. Only Xiao Ying, whose body was almost stiff, was left gritting her teeth so hard that they almost broke. She was anxious to remedy the situation and hurriedly went out of the city to look for him. When she found the place, the fight between the Holy Emperors had already ended. Just as Xiao Ying was hesitating on how she should handle this matter, she discovered that young Master Jun, who was covered in dust and had a foul stench, was cursing and swearing as he walked over. So, Xiao Ying quietly followed behind him, ready to dig out the mastermind behind it. She would never believe that this young man, who was still wet behind the ears, could come up with such a vicious provocation. Who would have thought that after following this guy for a while, this brat actually did not have any scruples at all? In no time at all, he had taken off all his clothes. He even purposely showed off his bare and perky, but twisting it a few times before jumping into the water with a plop. Xiao Ying had been following behind him the entire time, her eyes wide open, afraid that she would lose sight of him. Young Master Jun's lightning-fast speed was something that Xiao Ying had seen very clearly. Chapter 861. Although this woman's age and cultivation level could be considered as a 1,000-year-old monster, her determination in certain aspects was very ordinary. She might not even be stronger than an ordinary young lady, and might even be inferior. This was due to her unique background and experiences. There was nothing she could do about it. She waited for that dirty fellow to finish bathing with great difficulty. Hearing that he had come ashore, she stared blankly for a while. When she estimated that he had already put on his clothes, she turned around to take a look. But when she looked, she coincidentally saw that Jun Dashao was standing naked on the riverbank, facing the moon, looking very imposing. This fellow actually hadn't put on his clothes for so long. She had seen 2 embarrassing naked scenes in a row, and now Jun Dashao's appearance was no longer a secret to her. Beauty Qiao was so angry that she almost fainted. How could this fellow be so shameless? Could he be an exhibitionist? If she were to ask, young Master Jun would definitely give a plausible explanation. What's wrong? I'm so dirty, and I'm not allowed to bathe? Since I'm bathing, shouldn't I take off my clothes? After bathing, I should at least dry the water droplets on my body, right? Otherwise, how can I put on my clothes? What's wrong with me being naked in the middle of the night in such a desolate place? Who would have thought that there would be a beauty waiting for me to bathe in the middle of the night in such a desolate place? Who was the more shameless one here? Was it really this young master? Speaking of which, with Jun Dashao's character, if he knew that a beauty was peeking at him bathing, he would probably be even more unwilling to put on his clothes. I'm a man. Having a woman, especially a beautiful woman, willing to admire my body seems to be a pretty good thing. Liang won't be at a disadvantage as a result, with one party intentionally and the other unintentionally. The situation had developed to such an awkward and delicate state. On the riverbank, the man and woman stared at each other in dismay. Jun Dashao, on the other hand, was thinking about how to escape. His yin-yang escape had been seen through by the person in front of him. If he used the Hongjun Pagoda to escape, then he wouldn't have many trump cards left. Beauty Qiao, on the other hand, was thinking about how to capture this fellow and how to make him obediently admit to his crimes. She really didn't have any evidence. Jun Dashao, who had just put on his pants and was still naked, was thinking quickly. Thinking about how the 9 Nether 14th young master had been following behind him the entire time, but did not make any moves. Would such an unexpected thing affect his future plans? The more he thought about it, he couldn't help but feel a little amused. He'd exerted all his strength, using the 9 Nether 14th young master's name to stir up as much trouble as possible. He'd even used all sorts of methods to push the fire onto the 9 Nether 14th young master. Only now did he realize that the person he had been trying to frame had actually been following behind him all along, and had seen every single one of his actions clearly. What was this? He must have thought that he was powerful and didn't care about this. But it was one thing for him to not care, but it was another for him to implicate him. It might seem like one thing, but it was actually 2 different things. If 9 Serenities and 14 Masters came to settle the score with him in the future, with his current strength, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to deal with them. Jun Moxie laughed bitterly. It seemed like everything had been too smooth ever since he had been reborn, and he had underestimated the heroes of the world. Tonight, it seemed like everything was under his control, but in fact he had made 3 huge mistakes. First, in the martial arts scene that he had directed, the Holy Emperor versus the Holy Emperor. The Misty Mansion had fought 7 against 2, and their strength was far superior. He had thought that the two holy emperors from the Holy Lands would have no way to escape, but he didn't expect that the other party's schemes had far exceeded his expectations. Not only did they not fall into a disadvantage, but they also used a mud rain to turn the tables and successfully escape, even drowning him, the director. Second, the three Holy Lands actually had such a person with the legendary all-seeing eye to see through his yin-yang escape, which he had never failed before, and even saw through all his previous actions. And the biggest mistake was still the third. He had used the name of 9 Serenities and 14 Masters to direct today's big show, but he didn't know that all his actions had been seen by the original owner of the body. In fact, if it wasn't for the original owner's help, he would have been caught by the other party long ago. It seemed like a perfect performance, but after careful consideration, there were actually many flaws, and he even owed the other party a huge favor. He had failed. In the time to reflect, Jun Daxiao's gaze actually turned to Qiao Ying, and only then did he realize that this woman was just standing there abruptly, with her brows tightly furrowed, as if she was thinking about something difficult to understand. Her face was sometimes confused, sometimes dull, sometimes gritting her teeth, and sometimes filled with melancholy. All of this showed what it meant to be absent-minded. This old senior had actually fallen into a state of absent-mindedness at such a critical moment. Jun Daxiao, who was originally a little depressed, couldn't help but not know whether to laugh or cry. He had seen many old seniors, but this was the first time in his life that he had seen such a muddle-headed old senior. Miss, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave now. Jun coughed. No matter what, he couldn't associate this woman in front of him with those old white beards who were hundreds of years old, although she claimed to be older than those old fellows who were hundreds of years old. He just didn't know if it was true. Leave? And you can't go. Qiao Ying, who was awakened by Jun Moxie's words, immediately reacted. Realizing that she had actually lost her mind at this critical moment, she couldn't help but blush. She covered it up by coughing twice, and then restored her cold and elegant posture. Her pretty face tensed up, and she put on the airs of a senior and said lightly, "You want to leave?" "Not yet. If you don't give me a satisfactory explanation, how can you leave just like that?" Jun Moxie showed a startled look, and both of his hands shook vigorously there. "Miss, I'm really innocent. I didn't do anything to you. Why do I have to take responsibility?" "You have to take responsibility. You've caused such a thing. Shouldn't you take responsibility?" Qiao Ying didn't notice the trap in Jun Moxie's words at all. Seeing that Jun Moxie was admitting defeat, she couldn't help but feel proud and said even more unforgiving, "I knew it. I knew that people can't be too handsome." Jun Moxie speechlessly looked up at the sky and almost cried out loud, "Oh heavens! Oh earth! Is it a mistake for me to be handsome? Why is it like this? My body, hair, and skin are all given by my parents. I really have no choice. It's not that I want to look like this. Why do I have to be chased by women every day and have to take responsibility?" Qiao Ying was instantly stunned. She could only feel that her pretty face was burning up. "This bastard." Jun Moxie looked at her with a sorrowful expression and said while crying, "Big sister, I really didn't expect that even though I've been keeping such a low profile, a fairy like you would actually wait for me to come out of the bath and peep at my body for me to take responsibility. Why did you fall in love with me? This is really a joke by the heavens, a joke by fate. I am grateful for Miss Wrong Love, but I really can't bear your true feelings. I know that saying it so bluntly will hurt your heart, but it's a good thing for you, me, and the family to recognize this fact as soon as possible." You lecher. What nonsense are you talking about? Who waited for you to come out of the bath?" Qiao Ying's forced calmness had long disappeared. She was so angry that her entire body was trembling, and her beautiful face was pale. Looking at this shameless person in front of her, she could only feel her vision turning black. "Miss, I really didn't lie to you. I really do have a family, and I have more than one wife. Even if you don't mind, they will mind. My feelings are tangled, and it's hard to cut them off. But I still hope that Miss can wield the sword of wisdom to cut off the wrong fate." June Moxie suddenly said in an unusually solemn tone, and with a kind of desolate and righteous tone, he said, "Miss, just tell me which part of me you fell in love with?" After saying this, his expression changed, and he looked like he wanted to cry, but no tears came out. He stomped his feet and beat his chest. "Miss, just tell me which part of me you fell in love with? I'll change. I'll definitely change. Is that not enough? Change your head." Xiaoying felt that her chest could explode at any time. Her figure flashed, and she soared into the sky. In an instant, she appeared above June Moxie, and her two slender hands slapped towards June Moxie's face fiercely. If she didn't slap this hateful person's mouth until it was swollen, the great beauty Xiao felt that it was an unforgivable thing. June Moxie floated with the wind, and he floated more than 100 feet away like a feather. He shouted, "Miss, I know it's my fault for not accepting your true feelings. It's my fortune that you like me and have fallen in love with me, but I really can't be what you want me to be. What should I do? I also know that hitting someone is a form of affection, and scolding someone is a form of love. Miss, you said that you're a beauty, and it's hard to find a three-legged toad in this world, but there are many two-legged men. Why do you have to pour your feelings into a married man like me? It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Just let it go." Xiaoying pursed her lips tightly and chased after him. She didn't say a word. She was afraid that the moment she opened her mouth, she wouldn't be able to stop herself from cursing out those vulgarities that she had never used in her entire life. The strong wind whistled, and it covered the sky and covered the earth. June Moxie was like a fish in the water. He slid left and right, and he easily dodged them. He didn't feel the slightest bit of pressure, and he couldn't help but feel that this senior didn't really live up to her name. However, every move that the woman in front of him used was full of strong wind whistling, like a raging tide and like a landslide. Moreover, such a strong force was only used within a radius of a few feet. The leaves that were 100 feet away actually didn't move at all. Just this skill alone was definitely above that of the Holy Emperor and was not below that of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, although the level of mastery was far inferior. But why did she have such a Xian strength? But her technique was so poor. As June Moxie dodged, he was greatly surprised. Chapter 862. This palm technique of Xiaoying's was called the inescapable net. There was a connection between each palm. After dozens of palm strikes, it formed an airtight cage from the sky to the ground. Even the best escape technique would be useless in this kind of space. Although Xiaoying could see the location of June Moxie's real body with her all-seeing eye, she felt that this brat's escape technique was much better than the strange races and was even more difficult to grasp. After the strange races used their escape technique, she could see that it was a real human. But after this brat used his escape technique, she could only see a faint shadow at most. If she were to use those powerful spatial techniques, she would need a certain amount of time to prepare. And this brat's vigilance was really too strong. She believed that once she made a move, he would immediately take the opportunity to escape. This brat's lightness skill was superb, and although her skills were outstanding, she was still inferior to him. Moreover, he was also good at escape techniques. If she allowed him to use his escape technique, she might not have the confidence to catch him. The best plan was to use the method of boiling a frog in warm water. Using the seemingly gentle and dense technique of the inescapable net palm, she would slowly make him lower his guard. By the time he came to his senses, he wouldn't be able to move even if he wanted to. Whether he wanted to escape, it would already be too late. The inescapable net palm technique was a special technique created by the seniors of the sacred grounds for the strange race's escape technique. Between the palms, there was a connection of qi, and it could lock onto the strange race's position. Even if the strange races hid themselves, they could still rely on qi to attack the enemy, who was in nothingness. It was just that this kind of palm technique had too high of a basic requirement of profound energy. Even if it was the Holy Emperor, if he were to use the inescapable net palm technique, all of his profound energy would at most be enough to use once. And after using it, due to exhaustion, he would usually perish together with the enemy, which was equivalent to exchanging a life for a life. But at this moment, in Xiao Ying's hands, this inescapable net palm skill, with her extremely profound strength as the foundation, complemented each other perfectly. She did not feel the slightest bit of strain, and was able to execute it skillfully and easily. The corner of Xiao Ying's mouth curled into a cold smile. Her slender palm was as white as jade as she casually drew out a line, leaving behind a snow-white afterimage of her palm. As for that enormous force, it slowly stopped in mid-air, gathering, gradually converging towards the center. "Miss, are you tired or not? This will consume a lot of energy. Why don't you drink some water first?" June Moxie laughed unscrupulously while dodging the attacks. He could tell that although the opponent in front of him had unimaginable power, he didn't know how to use it at all. His palm strikes were all hitting empty air. How could he defeat the enemy in such a battle? Moreover, this old senior who claimed to have lived for more than 1,000 years seemed to have a state of mind that was even purer than a little girl's, and even more easily provoked. Therefore, June Moxie's silver tongue came in handy again. He had to provoke her as soon as possible, and then find a chance to escape. Otherwise, with such an old monster following behind him, and being able to see through his yin-yang escape, this feeling was too scary. Xiao Ying snorted coldly, but her movements instantly sped up, even though she still couldn't hit him. June Moxie leaned backwards, dodging the palm strike. Just as he was about to open his mouth to tease her again, he suddenly realized that the surrounding air seemed to have solidified in an instant. That feeling was as if the heavens and the earth had turned into walls, trapping him in the middle. Although it wasn't like the heaven and earth prison, it was a different kind of confinement that gradually compressed the space of movement. "This is bad." June Deshao barely dodged 2 more times, and finally couldn't move at all. Xiaoing finally stopped and raised her face with a cold smile. "June Moxie, how's my inescapable net palm skill? Is it really useless? Aren't you sharp-tongued? Say a few more words for me." "It's really not bad. I didn't think that this trashy palm skill was actually a sneaky palm skill. It's really impressive." June Moxie's body froze in midair, but the corners of his mouth still curled into a smile that could infuriate people to death. He then said in a frivolous manner, "But you've spent so much effort just to create a world cage. Don't you think it's a little troublesome?" "You're right. This is indeed similar to the heaven and earth prison. It's very similar to reaching the same goal through different means. But this cage is completely made up of Xian-Shi, without using the slightest bit of heaven and earth energy. This kind of palm skill was originally specially created to deal with you. This kind of monster who can hide. June Moxie, the treatment you're enjoying now is the same as the strange race's supremacy enduring heavens. You should be quite proud. F***CK. Don't compare this young master with that bunch of trash. What is this young master proud of?" June Moxie raged. "You're a really hateful woman. You actually dare to violate this young master's biggest taboo. So what if I violated it?" Xiao Ying snorted, a pleased expression appearing on her face. Her figure floated forward, her jade-like palm raised up, slapping fiercely towards June Moxie's face. "Aren't you very good at dodging? Why don't you keep dodging?" June Moxie looked at her palm, his eyes expressionless. Just as her palm was about to hit his face, Xiao Ying unexpectedly hesitated for a moment, then said, "As long as you agree to follow me back to clarify the misunderstanding between the 4 factions, I can promise not to hit you. And after this matter is settled, I will let you go and let you leave unscathed. How about it?" "Impossible." June Moxie glared. "This young master would rather die than submit. But I really don't want to hurt you. My hands have never been stained with the blood of humans. Other than the strange races, I don't want to hurt any other living beings on the continent." Xiaoing bit her lips and said, "There isn't any deep hatred between the 2 of you. Besides, you said earlier that they are all heroes of the war for seizing the heavens. And you obviously hate the strange races. Why can't we work together? Wouldn't it be better if we worked together and returned peace to the continent?" Even if no one remembers us in the future, we have finally done our part for the sake of this continent. Moxie, think about it. I swear on the name of the all-seeing Rakshasa, as long as you can realize your mistakes, I will definitely guarantee your safety and let you leave unscathed. The 3 holy lands. No one will dare to touch even a hair on your head. Pausing for a moment, she continued, as long as you are willing to agree, I can even write off the matter of you offending me just now and treat it as if it never happened. How about it? After saying that, her clear eyes stared intently at Moxie, a look of anticipation in her eyes. The strange races were originally experts in concealment techniques. If there was an expert on their side who was even more skilled in concealment techniques than them, then it would be a great blessing for the war for seizing the heavens. So, Xiao Ying, who was already used to looking at the big picture, decided to do her best to persuade Moxie to turn over a new leaf. You are really great, but also too naive. Moxie sighed a little. This woman in front of him was indeed wholeheartedly thinking about the war for seizing the heavens, wholeheartedly thinking about the lives of the world, completely without any concept of fame or gain. It was truly admirable. It was actually comparable to the previous Mei Shuiyan, and even more so. But in the 3 holy lands, how many people could there be like this? If everyone was like you, then there wouldn't be a war for seizing the heavens in this world. Moxie said lightly. The title of a hero is not a reason to enjoy special privileges, and protecting the lives of the world is not an excuse to kill people at will. The war for seizing the heavens is also not a place for fame and fortune. It's a pity that although the people of the 3 holy lands also see the war for seizing the heavens as their greatest responsibility, but more of it is for their own selfish desires, killing the innocent and being cruel and heartless. Although I, Moxie, am not a good person and am willing to do my best for the war for seizing the heavens, no matter what, I will not be associated with them. Xiao Ying's face instantly darkened. She looked at Moxie, and a look of pity appeared in her eyes as she said slowly, now that things have come to this, there is no longer any room for reconciliation. I cannot watch the 4 factions split just because I admire you. Forgive me for offending you. Her palm turned into a claw, grabbing towards Moxie's chest. Moxie chuckled, and a hint of gentleness appeared on his face as he said, You and her are really alike, huh? The words you said, I can see that they are completely sincere. So, this young master will not make things too difficult for you. Farewell. With a flash of his figure, he suddenly disappeared without a trace from the dense, inescapable net that was completely made up of pure, profound energy. Xiao Ying was shocked and hurriedly used her all-seeing eye to look around. However, the surroundings were completely silent, and there was not a single shadow left. It was as if Moxie had really disappeared into thin air. Xiao Ying could clearly see that Dashao did not even use any escape technique this time, and had mysteriously disappeared just like that. What kind of technique was this? Furthermore, there was something strange. Every time she used her all-seeing eye in the mortal world, she would always see countless ghosts wandering around. But this time, she actually did not see anything, and only saw countless wisps of fog floating around. What is going on? Could it be that all the ghosts in this world had also completely disappeared? Thinking up to here, she could not help but feel relieved. Although her Xian-Shi was powerful and rare in this world, and she could see all evil spirits, but deep down, she was still a woman. As long as she was a woman, or even the majority of people in this world, they would be nervous and afraid of those things. If she could not see them from now on, Xiao Ying felt that she would be much more relaxed, no matter whether it was her heart or spirit. Just as Xiao Ying was pondering her all-seeing, I discovered that there were many figures walking toward her from afar. Everyone had an indifferent expression. Some had no head, some had no lower body, and some were missing limbs. They were just floating in the air, slowly coming over. Xiao Ying cried out in shock, and hurriedly deactivated her all-seeing eye. Her figure flashed, and she flew towards the direction of Chrysanthemum City in panic. After parting on bad terms previously, the three Holy Lands were bound by a common enemy, and only had hostility towards the Misty Mansion. The three Holy Emperors were all filled with anger, and after they returned, they immediately sent pigeons to inform the upper echelons of the Holy Lands. Then they gathered all the people present and announced this matter in front of everyone. Chapter 863. Everyone in the Holy Land clamored that they must make the bastards from Misty Mansion pay the price. They would rather perish indiscriminately than swallow this grievance. Compared to this sudden conflict, the news of 9 serenities and 14 masters from Jean Mubai's side did not attract much attention at this time. Everyone's focus was on the dispute between Misty Mansion and the Holy Land. Among them, many radical saints were filled with righteous indignation and immediately wanted to find trouble with the 7 people from Misty Mansion. So what if it was Misty Mansion? So what if it was the Holy Emperor? How could they bully others like this? Although Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu did not fall into a disadvantageous position in the previous battle, they were still quite depressed. After all, the divine weapon that they had carried with them for half their lives had left them just like that. And when Jean Mubai was even more furious, the 3 Holy Emperors gathered their troops and were about to set off. Anyway, this matter had already been notified to the higher-ups of the Holy Land. What would happen in the future would be decided by the higher-ups. Right now, the Misty Illusory Manor is already bullying us to the point of even using such despicable methods to snatch away our weapons. This is practically taking a dump on our heads. Could it be that this old man really cares about this life of his? Therefore, the troops were about to set off. But at the most crucial moment, 2 mysterious figures suddenly appeared and forcefully stopped this operation. Otherwise, Chrysanthemum City would have truly been littered with chrysanthemums tonight. This group of people could have completely blown up all the chrysanthemums in Chrysanthemum City once, and let this Chrysanthemum City fly to the sky in one piece. And when the 2 mysterious figures went to find the people from Misty Mansion for an explanation, they found that Chao Guofeng and the others from Misty Mansion had already disappeared without a trace. They had evacuated Chrysanthemum City at the first instance. They did not even have the time to receive the news that 9 serenities and 14 masters was now in Chrysanthemum City before they left. They had even abandoned their main responsibility for this trip. With their departure, the misunderstanding between the Holy Land and the Misty Mansion would not be resolved in a short period of time. Furthermore, it might even lead to some unforeseen events. At this time, Xiao Ying, the only person who knew the inside story, was confronting June Moxie in the wilderness. By the time she returned, it would be too late. Moreover, as long as June Moxie did not return with her, even if she was willing to explain everything, not many people would believe her. Within Chrysanthemum City, it was temporarily ruled by the 3 Holy Lands. At this point, the alliance between the 2 forces, which had lasted for 10,000 years, had completely collapsed on the surface. And the other thing that the 3 Holy Lands could not stand was that the Chun family's attitude was becoming colder and colder. Under Chun Qin's influence, in addition to the tragic death of his second son, Chun Qing Tian himself had been scolded by Jean Mubai. It was clear that the 3 Holy Lands only treated his family as a supply station, or rather, a fat sheep, and an extremely lowly fat sheep. This caused Chun Qing Tian, who had always been proud of relying on the Holy Lands, to be completely disheartened. And the next thing that happened caused Chun Qing Tian to be even more indignant. For his son's funeral, not a single person from the 3 Holy Lands showed up. This was truly intolerable. How did my son die? Wasn't it all because of you otherworldly experts fighting amongst yourselves? He died without a complete corpse, a tragic sight to behold. Now that he's dead, not a single person from the 3 of you came to the funeral to say a single word of consolation. Even if it was just a supreme martial artist, it could be considered as giving face. If this matter was in the past, Chun Qing Tian would have understood. The people from the three holy lands who came this time were at least martial saints. What kind of existences were they? His own son, what did he count as? They would not even take it to heart at all. If there was a need to disturb a martial saint for a mere youth's funeral, wouldn't that be making a mountain out of a molehill? If the three holy lands really sent people over, the Chun family would be overwhelmed by the favor and would not be able to rest easy. But the same matter now had a completely different meaning. Not only did no one come to attend the funeral, not a single person came to console this pitiful father who had to send off his son. Chun Ching Tian was completely disheartened. He even felt that he was bored to death and had nothing left to live for. He felt that all the effort he had put in all these years was a huge joke, a joke that was not funny at all. And in view of the family head's emotions, how good could the attitude of the entire Chun family be? Naturally, they were indifferent and dealt with the matter. As such, the Chun family was busy with the funeral and naturally did not have the time to entertain the experts from the three holy lands. And although the experts were even more depressed, there was nothing they could do. They could only wait for the Dongfang family's assassins to hurry over and settle this matter. Then they could return quickly. The more they thought about it, the more they found the secular world to be foreign to them. That night, the Chun family head, Chun Ching Tian, and his eldest son, Chun Chun, had a secret meeting in the study room. A family head of a generation actually had to secretly arrange a meeting with his own son. Chun Ching Tian was already a little pitiful as a family head. Chun, the Chun family is already finished. The first sentence that came out of Chun Ching Tian's mouth caused Chun Chun to be shocked. He raised his head and looked at his father's solemn expression. A gloomy aura emanated from Chun Ching Tian's body. So you have to leave this place. Chun, you're the Chun family's only hope. Leave this whirlpool as soon as possible. As long as you are still alive, our Chun family still has hope of making a comeback. Chun Ching Tian's gaze was heavy as he said, dispiritedly, Father, although our Chun family is in a difficult situation and is still a distance away from some of the super families, but we are not at the stage of destruction yet, right? Chun Chun did not understand. It's already finished. Ever since old ancestor Chun Chong died, our Chun family has been declared dead. All these years, under the protection of our old ancestor, we were able to coexist peacefully. However, we were still much weaker than the Zhan family, who was just a city away. We're just the vassals of the Holy Lands. We might seem strong, but as long as the Holy Lands give up on us, we are worthless. Now that our old ancestor has died, our Chun family has already become a bait to lure the Dongfang family. Chun bait. You should know what the word bait means. Whether the fish takes the bait or not, the bait is just a decoration. If the fish takes the bait, then the bait will be swallowed first. Father had always hoped that this would be a chance given to us by the three holy lands. Even if I were to be sacrificed as bait, the Holy Lands would treat our Chun family differently. Now, I know that I was wrong. The Holy Lands will never place families like ours in their eyes. Even if all of us are sacrificed, even if 100 families like ours are sacrificed, as long as the Holy Lands achieve their goal, it is enough. As for these families, they're destined to be sacrificed. Chun Ching Tian's face was ashen as he said in a low voice. Chun Chun looked at his father in a daze, but a huge wave of emotions surged in his heart. But if I leave, wouldn't the people from the Holy Lands suspect you even more? Chun Chun furrowed his brows and asked worriedly, Suspect me? So what? Chun Ching Tian chuckled and said sorrowfully, From the start, I'm already a dead man. If you stay, I'll also die, and you'll lose your own life instead. If you don't stay, I'll still be dead. Is there any difference? After saying this, Chun Ching Tian stood up and turned around, saying slowly, Go, bring your woman with you. Tell her that from now on, she is my Chun Ching Tian's daughter-in-law, the Chun family's matriarch. His back was still facing away from Chun Ching Tian, but he took out a brocade box and tossed it over. Chun Chun caught it and heard Chun Ching Tian say, This is the token of our Chun family. Inside, There's also the jade hairpin on your mother's head, a gift for your daughter-in-law. I didn't agree with you two in the past and caused that child to suffer. Tell her not to hate me." He waved his hand and said, "Go and hide your identity. From today onwards, if you can rebuild the Chun family, then as long as there are no experts on the level of the Holy Emperor in the family, don't ever step into the pugilistic world again." "Father, if you don't leave, I'll kill you with my own hands, then I'll commit suicide." Chun Ching Tian raised his head, his back view bleak, but his tone was filled with endless determination. Chun Chen's tears fell like rain. He knew that his father had already made up his mind and could not be changed. Choking with sobs, he knelt on the ground and slowly kowtowed to his father a few times before bowing and retreating. Chun Ching Tian stood there quietly. When Chun Shun retreated to the door, he said slowly, "I'd rather be a farmer than a vassal." Chun Chen's body trembled, and he nodded his head heavily. He forcefully suppressed the sorrow in his heart and retreated quickly, disappearing into the night. Chun Ching Tian stood straight like a spear, a comforting smile slowly appearing on his face. As long as Chun Shun could walk out of this whirlpool, then no matter where he lived in the future, the Chun family would always have a root. He sat quietly in the study, not moving an inch. Early in the morning, the housekeeper knocked lightly on the door and entered. "Family head, the ancestral hall has been robbed. All the ancestral tablets have suddenly disappeared." Chun Ching Tian's body trembled, and a hint of warmth appeared in his eyes. He waved his hand and said, "I understand. You can leave now." The housekeeper looked at him with a puzzled expression and left. His heart was filled with doubts. Why is the family head acting so strangely today? The ancestral tablets being robbed is such a big matter, but he's actually not doing anything about it. Shaking his head, the housekeeper left in puzzlement. In the study, Chun Ching Tian heaved a sigh of relief and muttered, "I can finally be at ease." The next morning, the Holy Lands found out that the eldest young master of the Chun family, Chun Shun, had suddenly disappeared. When Zhang Mubai found out about this, he immediately sent someone to summon Chun Ching Tian. Furthermore, he gave Chun Ching Tian a lot of face and personally received him. Staying in the Chun family's house, he even gave Chun Ching Tian a lot of face. Zhang Mubai thought that he had already given Chun Ching Tian a lot of face. After all, he was the Holy Emperor. To be able to lower himself to talk to him personally, Chun Ching Tian should be extremely excited and overwhelmed by this favor. Thus, Zhang Mubai did not hide anything and directly asked, "That eldest son of yours, where did he go? That vile spawn?" Chun Ching Tian sighed. Some time ago, he took a fancy to a serving girl in the family and actually wanted to marry her. How could this old man agree to it? Thus, he's been at loggerheads with me during this period of time. But I never imagined that this vile spawn would actually elope with that serving girl at this time. What a disgrace to the family. This old man must capture him back and punish him according to the family law. Elope? Zhang Mubai snorted coldly. Chun family head, does your Chun family need to bring the ancestral tablets when eloping? You didn't elope earlier or later, but at this time? Chun Ching Tian, do you think that this seat is easy to fool? As Zhang Mubai's tone became heavier and heavier, a thick pressure suddenly enveloped Chun Ching Tian. His voice also became cold. Chun Ching Tian, you better tell me the truth. Perhaps this old man can spare your life. Otherwise, turning the entire Chun family into ashes is something that this old man can do with just a wave of my hand. Speak. What are you plotting? What do you want to do? Do you have any ill intentions towards the Holy Lands? Let me tell you, that's seeking death. Holy Emperor Zhang's tone was filled with killing intent, not concealing it at all. In this period of time, he had been continuously met with misfortune. Whether it was the Misty Mansion or the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters, they were all slapping his face again and again. Yet, he had nowhere to vent his anger. This caused him to be unable to control his emotions. And when he was being beaten up, this damned Chun Ching Tian was watching from the side, causing Holy Emperor Zhang Mubai's face to be tarnished. This was the biggest reason why Zhang Mubai felt that Chun Qing Tian was an eyesore every time he saw him. So every time he spoke to Chun Qing Tian, it was as if he couldn't wait for this fellow to die. Watching this old man make a fool of himself, that was the biggest sin. So, Zhang Mubai's killing intent had long been ignited. But Chun Qing Tian had always been respectful towards the Holy Lands and had never neglected them. Furthermore, he was the descendant of his disciple. If there was no suitable reason, Zhang Mubai would be too embarrassed to make a move. But from then on, the Chun family's attitude towards the Holy Lands gradually turned cold, giving Zhang Mubai the most suitable reason. Following Chun Qin's departure, Zhang Mubai decided to use this as a pretext. No matter what, he had to kill all the Chun family members who had witnessed that incident. When Chun Qing Tian heard these threatening words, he could not help but be taken aback. Following that, a strong wave of anger surged. The reason why Chun Shun left was completely because of Chun Qing Tian's arrangements. This was not false, but Chun Qing Tian had never thought of doing anything to the three Holy Lands. Firstly, he did not dare. Secondly, he did not feel that it would reach the point where he would not rest until one side was dead. Chun Qin's decision to leave home was just a precaution. But who would have thought that Zhang Mubai would not even bother asking and wanted to pin such a heavy crime on him? Old ancestor, what do you mean by that? Our Chun family has always been loyal, and our ancestor is your direct disciple. Why would we have the intention to rebel? This is really He Tian's injustice. Chun Qing Tian argued loudly. Injustice or not, you know it yourself. The killing intent on Zhang Mubai's face grew thicker and thicker. Chun Qing Tian's last memory was a pure white palm suddenly enlarging in front of him. And then he did not know anything else. When Hai Wuya and He Jiqiu received the news and rushed over, the entire Qin family had already been destroyed. Not even the fowls and dogs were spared. Facing Zhang Mubai's viciousness, the two holy emperors who were on the same level as him were too embarrassed to say anything. They only sighed and said, "Killed, so be it." After that, there was no other reaction. After all, it was just a secular family. Even if it was destroyed, it was not a big deal. There were countless vassal families like this in the three Holy Lands. In just a few short years, they could nurture countless of them. It was really not much. The only one who was enraged was the guardian Xiao Ying. The moment Xiao Ying returned, she knew about this matter. Then, she went to look for Zhang Mubai angrily. "Why did you kill them?" Xiao Ying was so angry that her face was pale. "Old Xiao, please calm down. This matter is all my fault. Ever since I came to Chrysanthemum City, strange things have happened one after another. Furthermore, the silent appearance of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters also raised my guard." Zhang Mubai's face was solemn. After my investigation, I discovered that for some reason, this Chun family was actually the hiding place of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. Below Chun Qing Tian's study is a cellar. It is filled with the yin qi of the 9 Serenities and 14 Masters. Furthermore, there are traces of the 9 Netherfrost Blade. He paused for a moment before continuing. Then, I discovered that in today's meal, the Chun family had actually used a large amount of fallen immortals. This is the number 1 cultivation dispersing medicine in the world. It is extremely vicious. Even a holy emperor would not be able to raise his Xian Qi for a period of time after using it. This is clearly an attempt to catch all of us in one fell swoop. Such a vicious act is truly infuriating. If we don't kill them, how can we convince the masses? Zhang Mubai's expression turned from anger to apologetic. "It's just that I was too angry and actually forgot to ask for Senior Qiao's permission. Please forgive me. AI, this Zhang Mubai is also deeply in love with them. After all, they're the descendants of my disciple. For something like this to happen, this old man is also guilty of not disciplining them properly." The Qin family was already all dead. What could he say? Wasn't it just a matter of Zhang Mubai's mouth moving up and down? Whatever he said was the truth. There was absolutely no one who would come out to refute him. Xiao Ying's expression softened. She didn't know the truth, and although she felt that Zhang Mubai's words made sense, she still couldn't bear it. She snarled angrily. Since that's the case, it's fine if you kill Chun Qing Tian. Why did you have to kill so many innocent people? Harming the innocent and massacring so wantonly. How is this something our holy land should do? Zhang Mubai apologized profusely, his expression filled with shame. Zhang Mubai, you better not lie to me about today's matter. Otherwise, even if you were the holy emperor, I will still uphold justice for the Chun family. Since things have already come to this, settle the Chun family's funeral properly. Xiao Ying left a sentence and turned to leave angrily. Zhang Mubai looked at her back view, and a trace of anger flashed across his eyes. Xiao Ying's position was not something that he, Zhang Mubai, could shake. Even if he had to sacrifice 10 Zhang Mubai to exchange for Xiao Ying, the Holy Lands would not hesitate. So, towards Xiao Ying, Zhang Mubai had no way at all. Furthermore, Xiao Ying's strength far surpassed his. Just as the Qin family was about to be annihilated, Jun Moxie was in the Hongjun Pagoda, drenched in cold sweat. After his battle with Xiao Ying, he had entered the Hongjun Pagoda. Mei Shuiyan saw him enter in a somewhat wretched manner. She could not help but ask, "What happened? Today I met a crazy woman." Young Master Jun took a deep breath and said, "A little girl who's only in her 20s actually said that she's lived for over 1,000 years. What a shameless boast. Huh. Could it be that she thinks that she's also an old demon?" Jun Dashao spoke smoothly, but he did not notice that Mei Shuiyan's expression had darkened in an instant. Lingling said, "A little girl in her 20s? Old monster?" "Yes. Even if it is not, it could also be true. This little girl's profound strength is really terrifying." Jun Dashao did not know that his death was near, and his mind was still replaying the battle just now. If not for the fact that he still had one last move, he was afraid that he would have died this time, and even the yin-yang escape would not be able to escape. "Are you mocking me?" Jun Moxie only felt a pain in his ear, and he had already been grabbed by Mei Shuiyan and twisted in half a circle. A dangerous light flashed in Mei Shuiyan's eyes, and she said indifferently, "Also an old monster? You've seen quite a lot of beautiful old monsters. Jun Dashao, this also of yours. What do you mean?" Jun Moxie's heart jumped, and only now did he know that he had violated Mei Shuiyan's taboo, and he hurriedly smiled apologetically. No, what I mean is, she is lying. How can there be such a young, old monster in this world?" Actually, I mean, Jun Moxie incoherently explained, and Mei Shuiyan became angrier and angrier. "I really am not talking about you." Jun Moxie wanted to cry, but no tears came out. "I did not mean that at all. You finally admitted that you secretly think that I'm also an old monster." Mei Shuiyan was furious, and her fingers tightened. Jun Dashao only felt that his ear was about to fall off, and he tilted his head and shouted, "I am not. No. How can my Shui Yin be compared to others? Shui Yin is so beautiful, so young, so beautiful. Like the bright moon in the sky, like the spring wind and rain, like..." Compliments poured out of Jun Moxie's mouth in an endless stream, truly like the surging Yangtze River. But the more he spoke, the more his ear hurt. It was obvious that this time, Mei Shuiyan was really angry, and he was so anxious that his forehead was full of sweat. No matter how powerful the art of unlocking heaven's fortune was, it was not to the point where his ears could grow back. Or perhaps it could be said that when it was cultivated to a high level, it would have that effect, but it was not yet at that level. After explaining for a long time, Mei Shuiyan finally let go of his ravaged ear. Her anger had not subsided, and she angrily sat at the side. Jun Moxie rubbed his nose and shamelessly sat down beside her. His nostrils flared, and he said with a salivating face, "Shui Yan's body is so fragrant. Just smelling it makes me feel relaxed and happy." "Stop talking nonsense. Tell me what happened to you," Mei Shuiyan said stiffly with a taut face. "Yes, your husband obeys." Jun Moxie hurriedly agreed. "Annoying. Whose husband are you? Mei Shuiyin pouted, and her face turned red. Jun Moxie finally heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. The rain is finally over. My God, Jun Dashao felt that his words just now didn't have any innuendo. So how did he suddenly offend her? It seemed that this woman's anger really didn't have any reason. He calmed himself down and began to narrate everything that happened to him. When he talked about Xiaoying, Jun Moxie even laughed, feeling that the girl was really too naive. You said that the girl's name is Xiaoying? Mei Shuiyin suddenly interrupted him, and her eyes widened. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.